field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in the field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl, somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it if news anchors informants who informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we courting ships, important gifts. Of course it is what extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks we ignoring, which informing this, informing this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?
Whoa, in a world. Forgot about this. Bear with me here. So we are doing Zionism part 2. So if you saw the last stream, you know that obviously you cannot cover this subject in depth on YouTube typically. So we're probably going to transition over. We're going to kind of see how it goes. But the Rumble link is linked in the YouTube chat. Both Rockfin and Rumble are in the description. So just kind of prepare to move over, because, you know, that's how you know there's nothing to it, that you're not allowed to talk about it. So we have a special guest with us today. I've kept up with his work for a pretty long time. I would call myself a fan. So let's just bring him on and let him kind of introduce himself. Adam, how's it going, brother? Thanks for jumping on. Yeah, of course, man. So, like, for people that don't know who you are, I guess if you want to kind of tell them what you cover predominantly and your position as YouTube friendly as you can, I guess. But yeah, you don't have to worry about it too much, but just kind of like what you cover for people that don't know.
No more news. My focus the whole time pretty much has been Zionism. So by Zionism, I mean end times prophecies, Judaism, Christianity, and even Islam. I would add in on the overarching of the Abrahamic religions, the Abrahamic paradigm, or matrix, as I like to call it. And that's been the focus. So end times, religion and politics, religion in the news, and then lately I've been exposing Jesus as a mythological figure and why he was invented. They say they can't hear me. Is that true?
Yeah, I fixed it. I had it.
Oh, okay.
I had it muted.
Okay. And so basically that in general, in a nutshell, religion and politics and Zionism, the dominant religion of the last 1700 years, the three Abrahamic faiths.
Right. Yeah, because of course the Abrahamic that branches off to the vast majority of modern religion, right? You got
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the greatest conspiracy. That's the greatest conspiracy. And it really is almost like a conspiracy theory that people believe in, you know? To believe in these stories is a little bit like a conspiracy theory that you have to have faith and believe in this thing, or you have to follow these commandments, otherwise you're going to be punished, right?
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy. God told us we have to chop off our foreskins, otherwise you're not in the tribe.
I'm not gonna lie, that's a very intense
one.
That's a very intense one, bro. I probably align with you on that a lot. Especially, so, you know, like children can't defend themselves, so they're freaking out. I was kind of telling you before, like, we obviously do have some disagreements. We'll just kind of cover really quickly. Like, I was raised Christian Baptist, and then I started asking people questions about the Bible, and like no one answered my questions. Like very simple, logical questions. You ask a lot of the kind of questions that I would ask, and none of them could answer it. None of them could answer Genesis 6. I would get kicked out of Sunday school and stuff. So, long story short, I got really jaded with religion in general, and I still dislike religion. I had a few. You fast forward all the way to like mid-20s. I had a few pretty crazy spiritual experiences. One of which being I said a prayer in the woods, asking for a wife and children. I used to like make jokes about being married. I thought it was stupid, but first time ever, I said a prayer, and then I opened up the Bible directly to, literally the first words I read was, "The Lord said, take a wife and children." This was obviously after I already, thought there was truth in the scriptures because I had a Bible and I was praying, right? But that's just one of the kind of things I've experienced. Now I know people of all religions say they experience that kind of thing, but when you do experience it, obviously, like I would be ignorant.
I've done things like that too.
Yeah,
I think certain things like that, you open up a certain page to a book at a certain time. That's happened to me lots of times, actually. I take a book, I'm looking for something, and boop, I flip right to it. Mm-hmm. So,
which is crazy.
That would be my response to that.
So at the least, it's showing some type of like metaphysical power, even if it's in your own mind. Like somehow your mind has known where to turn in that book, right? Like I started like running statistical odds on it, like 2,300 pages. How many times does it say something like that? Like the odds are basically impossible to turn it directly there and read that.
But if there's a million people that day, all opening a Bible and doing a prayer, like a few of them inevitably are going to open up right to the page.
Sure.
On every given day.
Sure, but like if you isolate my position, right, which is that I didn't even want to get married. Yeah. I'm just like, obviously, from like one prayer of my whole life, ever even wanting to get married, ask for it, read, take a wife and children. To me, it was very crazy. And then I end up meeting my wife on a tour. I was doing a tour during the pandemic situation. That's all we'll say. I was just kind of going around the country telling people like, bro, this is totalitarian. This is insane. And I met my wife on that tour towards the end, and then we got married pretty quickly, which is really just all insane for me. And then we had our first child, and her conception date fell on our wedding night or whatever. Right? So for me, everything really aligned. And I'm just saying that to say that I have like personal anecdotal experiences that I would never try to convince you with, but that's one reason that I kind of have my position. So long story short, I think the scriptures are one of the most like grabbled things. I think you're familiar with Owen Benjamin. I use the word grabbler or grabbled. It's very messed with. So like, really regardless of what is true or isn't true, that book has been used for major deception and control and justification for atrocities and has people turn their brains off, right? So I think on like the meta, we definitely agree on that, right? Like that religion just makes people kind of retarded slaves. I mean, like bluntly.
Yeah.
So, and then let's see. Like I was saying, whenever we were talking a little bit before, that one thing we disagree on is the historicity of Jesus, and that's a really big topic. It's a really big topic. I told you nothing's off limits, and we can talk about it, but I would be down to maybe set up like a a future conversation.
Well, you mentioned
about
it twice now. I got to hear. Just tell me,
Yeah.
who do you think the historical Jesus was, and what's the evidence for him that makes you believe him?
Well, okay, this is how I view the whole thing. Like, when it comes to history characters, evidence is very scant, like across the board. Like, even Carrier, actually, I was listening to him yesterday. He said, I think we all agree that, like, kind of majoring in history or focusing on history, that 99.999% of all historical writings get destroyed. And so
a lot of that is thanks to the Christians, by the way.
A lot of it is
for them, yeah.
A lot of it is, yes.
So
even the Romans themselves, themselves destroyed and had their stuff destroyed quite a bit. Which kind of, yeah, maybe so. But well, that's what I'm saying. Then you get into, well, what is a Christian? You have this group of people that are kind of crazy take over the belief and change it a bit, right? And then just start killing people and removing books and making a book and saying Jesus is God and all this stuff. They make their own religion, and then they make everyone believe it, right? So that, to me, that's not the real scriptures or the real truth that's hidden within them, right? So I think that's a big distinction. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the Christianity that came from the Council of Nicaea.
What is the truth in the scriptures then?
Okay,
if you filter out everything that's been grabbled or tampered with, meddled with, how do you decipher what the truth is there?
Good question. I would say this won't be a satisfactory answer for you, but you have to pray. And I would also say, obviously, you have to always go to the original languages and read it in context and just completely throw out anything anyone else says about it. And so when you do that, it's a very time-consuming thing. So when someone brings up something that's like hard to answer in the scripture, it doesn't really bother me because I'm like, oh, I don't know. I have to go look at the original language. Maybe that was added. Like, I don't know. I'm a very difficult person to debate in terms of that because, like, I have a very convenient position. I think that they've been heavily messed with. I will say the overarching truth is that there is a creator. There's a benevolent creator, and that the one true creator is referenced in the scriptures, and not only in the scriptures, and that there was a guy that fulfilled a lot of the prophecies that were written in the front of the book. There was no book, but in more ancient texts, and that he was killed. Good.
There was a Septuagint Greek translation, so there was a Tanakh and a Septuagint at that point. Although it wasn't as canonized as we have them today. Like right. they were reading Enoch, they were reading Wisdom of Solomon, all of these books that were eventually excluded from the canon.
Yeah. What do you think about that? I'm curious. Like, kind of a meta argument for me would be like, the idea that it's a Jewish mystic trick to trick the Gentiles into worshiping their God, right? That logically follows and has been very successful. But for me, it's like even so the Jewish interpretation and the modern Christian interpretation both actually write external documents changing what it says and kind of flip it around. Like the Talmud contradicts the Torah or the Tanakh a lot. And then same with modern Christianity. Catholicism and Protestantism just comes from that. So my question, I guess, is like, logically, if they wrote it as a trick, like, why are they subversively deleting and manipulating and changing what it says and then convincing everyone it says something that it doesn't really say? Right? That's my overarching thought.
The people that took power were the proto-Orthodox. There was other competing sects, other sects preceding them that only viewed Jesus as a mystical, celestial savior figure. And you mentioned you do think there was a guy that fulfilled prophecies. Like the New Testament has Jesus fulfilling like 300 prophecies, all types of stuff from the Old Testament. Some of them not even prophecies at all, completely out of context. Some of it that only makes sense in the Greek translation of the Septuagint. So my whole thing is that it's a story. The New Testament is a story derived from the Old Testament. They knew all these prophecies and they wrote a story fulfilling them. Not that some guy came and actually fulfilled all this magical stuff and miracles, and that the Jews are really the nation of priests that can speak for God and have the power of prophecy. That's the deception. It's a mythical figure. And Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles, took it to the Gentiles and got them fulfilled the objective of Judaism of having the Messiah theologically conquer the nations, and all of the nations abandon their gods and to worship the God of Israel. So if you don't even have to call it a trick. It's a fake prophecy fulfilling. It started with out of the synagogue. It started with Jews, most likely Essene anti-establishment sect that evolved into Christianity and mysticism. The original Jewish Christians, like the Ebionites, James and Paul, were very likely just ancient, mystical, end times, creating Bible code, closely reading all the Old Testament scriptures to try to learn about secrets that could be revealed by connecting different passages that have similar themes. And it's called Midrash. That's how they put together what they envisioned of their celestial Messiah, because they couldn't win on the battlefield. They couldn't make up a myth of a worldly victorious Messiah, but they could read the scriptures and see a suffering Messiah that was rejected by his people and then goes to the Gentiles. So that's where the plan came from reading it from the scriptures. And the objective was to have all of the nations cut down their trees, their idols, and then have them worship the God of Israel in fear of the God and his chosen people, basically. And that's what happened. The rabbis brag about it. That's what the prophecies were. That's what happened. It's all completely, kosher today for the most part. And that's the whole conspiracy in a nutshell.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely understand the logic in that. Like, because obviously there's this like modern religious argument that it's like, oh, Jesus, which my take on that name is really the Talmud is Yeshu, and it's made his name in remembrance. People blot it out. I'm sure you know that, but
it's Joshua, and it's Joshua, and you know where I think that comes from is from Zechariah. I want to say 12:6, I believe, and that's where it talks about an anointed one, Joshua, and Philo even likens that verse to the Logos, a character about the Logos, an anointed one. And that's where I think they picked the Yeshua name from.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Or Yehoshua, which is like salvation through Yah. But like what?
Yahweh saves. Coincidentally, Jesus is named.
Well, yeah.
Yahweh saves. The Savior is named Yahweh saves. Coincidentally, right? And
you wouldn't. If it was really a Messiah, it wouldn't be a coincidence, right?
Right. And in Christ, it means anointed in Greek. So the Mashiach, it's the King of the Jews, the Jewish Mashiach, and also, Judas's name is so convenient. Also, it really is Judah, which represents the Jews betraying him and rejecting him, which they just read out of the scriptures was the plan. And through that rejection, made it possible to go to the Gentiles and create this, like, whether they did it intentionally or not, it created essentially an anti-Jewish sect that still believed in the Messiah, still believed in the Torah, still worshiped the God of Israel. So that's the controlled opposition dialectic that was set up. Two Jewish factions fighting over who the Jewish Messiah is, and one went to the Gentiles, and that's the fight that's been unfolding the last 2,000 years, basically dominated all by the Abrahamic paradigm, fighting over the prophecies, which I think is all a deception.
Right. I guess that's one of the things also that doesn't make sense to me. So the idea that it was like a Jewish trick, if you will, for the Gentiles. Because that was what it would be.
Right? How about this? It's a Jewish myth.
Sure.
You're not going to debate that it started with Jews, right?
No. Okay. But that's not really what I'm saying.
The gospel's mostly myth, symbolic myth. Mark was the first gospel 4 decades after the supposed events, after the temple was destroyed, where nobody would have known if some guy 40 years before actually was crucified or not.
Well, I don't agree with that either, right?
Like, completely symbolic. Okay, well, you can tell me which part you disagree, but Mark
early
is
dating.
Complete, symbolic, allegorical, all derived from scripture, just like Paul's letters and all the earliest layers of the gospels of the New Testament, Paul's epistles, Peter, James, Hebrew, all of those don't even talk about any of the biographical details of Jesus. It's all mythological saviors from Scripture, theological arguments from Scripture.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm familiar with Carrier's position, not to the I haven't read his book, but I've listened to him quite a bit, and that is his position. It's interesting. There are counters that he kind of dismisses, like the brother of James, and he says, well, it could be a brother as a believer. But that's not really what the language
Paul says they're called brothers. Still today, Christians call each other brothers and sisters. So
sure. That's
the only hold on. That's the only thing in all of Paul that says anything about him being a brother. And Paul doesn't treat James as if he's the brother at all. And none of their conflict reflects at all that he would have been the brother. And Paul says that he learned of Jesus and he saw Jesus just as James and Peter did. And Paul says, have I not also seen the Lord? So this is the idea. Just like Paul never knew Jesus, all his epistles are the earliest books we have of the New Testament. He never knew Jesus. He said explicitly he learned about him from revelations, from visions or mystical ascension experiences, and from reading the Scriptures. Mm-hmm. So if Paul saw Jesus from the Scriptures, that's how I think James and Peter and the first sect of Christians saw him as well. Right. Mystically in ascension, like proto-Kabbalah, Merkava mysticism, ascension visions.
Yeah, I get that idea. And then there's also, Carrier makes the point that many people back then believed heaven basically had a lot of the stuff that is on the earth now. And so like you could die. Like you could, like that he believed that a celestial being called Jesus actually had a crucifixion and stuff like that. But in the heavenly realm, he was a celestial entity.
Yeah. And he cites Ascension of Isaiah for that.
Right. Yeah. Which was removed. Which I mean, you could argue that's a good one. That's a good argument for why it was removed, right? Because it would add context to celestial beings. Yeah.
But it's actually meddled with it as well. They meddled and added other stuff later on with it.
Yeah, and see, to me, what I do is I start digging into it, and I find out that like they took the Creator's name out 7,000 times, and then they put the word God and Lord all throughout the Bible and mixed it all up and called Jesus God. But like that's not what it says, though. It doesn't say.
Because it started from like Canaanite traditions where there was multiple gods. It was polytheistic, and then they had to fix it, and then they changed all the names to the same thing, or change what the names were to try to iron that out and make it seem more like a monotheistic religion.
Okay, and like just before I lose it, to go back to the previous point, like with like, so not to get caught up on the word trick, but let's call it like a Jewish myth. So like the Jewish people also fell for it because they refer to Jesus as a real person, even in their Talmud, right? I mean, to such an extent, they have like an insane disdain for the guy, and they say that he's burning an excrement, and they actually laugh about the fact that his English name means may his name be blotted out. So like, do they like at what? Where's the transition where they write this myth, kind of fulfilling it for the Gentiles, but then they start believing it themselves, or are they just like pretending to believe it even in their Talmud, right? You see what I'm saying?
I absolutely see what you're saying. And I read the book, The Jesus the Jews Never Knew, where it examines the Talmud and the Toldoth Yeshu and see what kind of Jesus they're talking about. There's several problems with using the Talmud as a source for the real Jesus. One of the Jesuses they mention is 100 years before Jesus was supposedly born, in a different time under a Greek leader in like 100 BC. And then another one was long after Jesus. So it's not even in the same time frame. They don't even get the same story right. Their Jesus in the Talmud, it says that he was stoned and hung on a tree according to Jewish law. So that's not the same Jesus as the Gospels. I think what it is also the Talmud was an oral law, but really wasn't codified, they believe, until like 100 to 600 AD. So this is when Christianity was already starting to spread. And most likely, they didn't actually know that Jesus didn't exist. The temple was destroyed. They wouldn't know about some random guy that didn't make too much of a stink. They were responding to Christian books. And it's not surprising that some Jew is going to write something bad about Jesus in the Talmud. He could have wrote it in 300, 500. Like, it's not surprising that some rabbi would have not nice things to say about Jesus, giving like the way Christians treated Jewish people.
That's a decent argument. That's a decent argument.
Blaming them for killing Jesus, like, and Christians go, "Oh, what they say in the Talmud, it's so mean." Like, can you? that's not proof that he's real. That's just proof that like some Jewish person wrote down not nice things, and it's not hard to understand why he wouldn't be a huge fan of Jesus and Christians.
So to kind of still man what I think was your strongest point there was like it was oral teachings until it was written down, and that was a little bit after the fact. It would have been even after the character named Jesus would have existed, and so sure they maybe had disdain.
The myth of character existed.
Right. That's like would have existed, right? So they're writing about even just the belief of the guy and like what the Christians believe,
the traditions and the rumors they heard of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get that. That's a decent response. Like, I guess what I'm saying is even the modern Jews, they act like he's a real guy. Right. So, I mean,
exactly.
So you're saying that they do it as a cover?
Believe he's a real guy.
Wait, say again?
Well, that's because it's in their traditions. That's because that's what the rabbis tell them. But exactly, they're not promoting what I'm saying. You know, they're not promoting that it's a mythological figure, because then the next question is, well, who invented him? Is why? And then if all the scholars start in the mainstream start promoting that Jesus never existed, Christianity is going to fall apart. And then there goes the number one religion in America that gives support to Israel, all the Zionist Christians.
See, and like, so we are getting into a pretty elaborate conspiracy on either side. And obviously I don't say that as a dismissive thing. Like, I think they lied about the earth, bro. Conspiracies exist and they're very elaborate, certainly with religion. But I guess this idea here is that
be a conspiracy.
Well, it does have to be because the Jews are pushing that out to Gentiles, right? Like, so like they're like, well, don't let the Gentiles know that we made Jesus, even though he's not real. So what we'll do is we'll trick our own in scholarly, so they'll think he is real. So then they'll by proxy propagate the belief that he is real.
For a long time, also, Jews are supposed to like not even Jesus is like Voldemort. They're not allowed to look into him at all. They're not allowed to read the New Testament, because I think a lot of them, if they were to read it, they would see exactly what it was, which is a midrashic story, a Kabbalistic type of fan fiction story where they just wrote a fictional account fulfilling all of these different prophecies.
Or the flip side would be like, or they'd see that he did fulfill them, right? But I mean, I certainly understand your point, but that would be
no question. All of the New Testament is all about Jesus fulfilling the Old Testament.
So we agree on that, obviously.
I don't know. I mean, what the Jews will say, rabbis will say, is that, oh, they took that out of context. Look, that's actually talking about the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 is actually about Israel. They're the suffering servant. And the Christians just totally pulled that out of context. And I say exactly, that is what happened. They didn't care. They would pull all types of stuff completely out of context to create the Jesus narrative. That was traditional Jewish exegesis at the time. You know what I mean? That's normal. That's like almost like Kabbalistic. What do you think all of the other apocryphal books are? All of that's found in Nag Hammadi, all that's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're all making up stories from the prophecies.
I got you. Yeah, like I definitely understand the logic. Like that's why I think we would agree on this. That it's baffling that there's a group of people that say that character was real, but that he did, and that what's written about him was real, but that it didn't fulfill the prophecies. They clearly did, and you're saying, well, of course they did because they wrote them based on it. They created the story of him based on it. Yeah, but it's still you have to admit that that's still a testament to how insane religion is. Like if he did exist and did those things, still because of religious bias, people say that he didn't fulfill them.
Nobody else. If he really lived and did those things, how did nobody else write about him during his lifetime?
Okay, so we can get into that. We can get into that. Like,
well, that's a huge question because there's no extra biblical mention of Jesus until 60 years after he died from Josephus, which is most likely a forgery. So it's really Tacitus and Pliny the Younger that is 90 years after it happened.
I think that the Josephus thing's a little more nuanced than that, right? There's the one that's blatantly messed with, right? Like they blatantly at the least embellished it to make it like very pro-Christian. Jesus, if you could call him a man, like very clearly, everyone agrees it's like pseudo-pornographic.
100% meddled with. Some of them say, oh, well, there was something there and he just added it in. I think best argument is the whole thing was inserted. And that's because Origen talked about Josephus and he talked about how Josephus makes no mention of our Lord Jesus. And that was the same book in library that Eusebius also used. Eusebius was like the historian of the church, basically, more than anybody else, with Constantine at that time afterwards.
That's pretty interesting. I've never heard that.
Right. And Eusebius is the first one to ever mention from his copy that most likely him or one of the scribes or somebody there in that time between Origen and him meddled with it and added that in on Josephus.
Let me just address like the Christians that are kind of spiraling. Like, truth doesn't really fear investigation, so you should be open to like all this investigative
I'm
questions.
seeing a lot of butthurt in the chat, but no arguments to refute anything I'm saying. Just a lot of baseless
yeah. I mean, I have some though. I have some. So like, but I don't want to. It's just there's so much to this, right? So with the Josephus thing, there's obviously the follow up where he denotes James as being the brother of Jesus. So are you saying that was also falsely put in there? Because
possibly yes.
I'm sure you know all this, right? The argument is that he obviously expects the reader to have some prior understanding of that character, the way that he references him.
Yeah, but he doesn't even really talk a lot. I mean, it's just a little tiny passage about Jesus. He doesn't even explain what a Christ is, which he normally would have done because that's not a term familiar to Romans.
Yeah, well, so, I think that I've seen a good.
Carrier has a whole chapter about that Josephus and gets deep into the James, the brother of Jesus, and why that's problematic. Maybe about a different Jesus, totally different situation. Because Joshua was one of the most common names at that time.
I've heard him also kind of concede that there's like gray area with the Josephus thing. He definitely does not think it is like
he completely thinks
there's a debate he did with like a PhD historian, and they had a follow-up debate as well, and they kind of like agreed to stay away from the Josephus thing because they went into it in depth the prior debate. But he said that there's some gray area. He said something to that effect. I guess just so the audience knows, there's
though it's not a gray area because even Bart Ehrman says that Josephus is not good proof of a Jesus because it's so long after.
Yeah, fair enough.
The Gospels were already in circulation. There were already Christian sects spreading. Mm-hmm. So if anything, he just learned about Jesus. And it's stupid to even say this because for sure it's been meddled with. But even hypothetically, if it was authentic, it's so late that the Gospels were already around, Christian sects were already around. He could have just learned this from the Christians.
So that's the best argument in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that can apply to a bunch of it, right? Because even like Tacitus, well, where did Tacitus get it? Where did Pliny get it? Or Pliny, whatever. Well, like the Gospels have circulated. Christians believe it. They've heard the stories from Christians at that point, and that's their source of information, which is a perfectly logical argument. But when it comes to the Josephus thing, just so people know, Josephus was notoriously very thorough as a historian, right? And there is, in my opinion, undeniably a portion of his writing that was messed with. Clearly a Christian came in and like wrote that Jesus was God, basically. But it does look like they messed with what was there, because if I've seen some people break down like the grammatical structure of it, portions of it, if you remove the clearly embellished portions, it matches Josephus' writing style. It's like actually not even a good forgery or pseudepigraphical input. It's like blatantly not even his writing style. They just tried to. If you remove those portions, it just talks about him like he's some dude in passing, and then in like I think it's a couple sections later.
It's so brief. It's so brief. Like, why would he mention something so brief? In where it's inserted, it's like it fits even better without having the whole take the whole passage out, and what was there before and after flows much better.
You mean taking the whole passage out, like all of it?
The whole Jesus passage there was added in. That's what I'm saying.
I would have to read that. So like what I'm saying is then there's obviously the secondary reference. So like the argument is that the first one was embellished, but that it does reference him, and then the second one references the fact the reader should already kind of know he's talking about and denotes James as his brother. And then I think the best rebuttal is, well, that was long after the fact anyway, and he could have just been drawing that information from Christians. Well, at the beginning they were called Nazarenes, right, or followers of the way, and then the Gospels themselves. And so like I understand that argument. I do think that it's obvious to see which part was changed, and I think the second portion kind of shows that he's referencing his prior input. Now, again, I'm actually conceding to you that doesn't necessarily prove anything, because he could have just heard the story from Christians or even from the Gospels. But I think and I'm not going to appeal to consensus. I'm very particular about fallacies, but when it comes to historical conversations, it's not like any other debate. It's not like a debate in science. It's like well known that 99% of the evidence is gone. You have to use logical and philosophical reasoning to piece things together as to what this person thought and what this. I mean, with everyone, even the emperor at the time.
The 99% that was lost. Also, a lot of that is because the Christians were in charge of these documents for hundreds of years, 1,000 years, and just think any ancient manuscript of some historian that was living in the time of Jesus and talking about that area and didn't mention Jesus, they'll pull those chapters out like they did in I'm forgetting which one. It might have been Tacitus actually, or Josephus. I can't remember right now. And all of those were lost. Imagine all the ones that could have been there that didn't mention Jesus, and then they got rid of it because it looked so bad and didn't mention it.
No, yeah, I mean, and then there's a whole thing about this, right? The Vatican. There's a guy from Israel. He's like messianic, but he won't really say it because you get killed over there. Not literally, but anyway, he's a scholar. He got to visit the Vatican, and in the junk drawer he found a Hebrew copy of Matthew. I'm bringing that up just to say there's no telling what the Vatican has, meaning they're called Christians, but they were one of the most violent. That's like the most violent opposition to the text. Like they've changed everything. They've taken things out. They've removed them, and they've hidden actual manuscripts, and they've retranslated it to put in Babylonian doctrine. That's my position. So I agree with you. The Christians destroyed a lot of stuff, and I would say even hid it. I think they still have some of it. The quote unquote Christians being the Catholic Church, right? And so you can see that we can actually agree on the meta point, but still there's like a nuanced disagreement there. I think the Catholic Church is the enemy. Right, I don't classify them as Christian. I classify them as like the opposite. They like attack the scriptures. I hope that was coherent to what I'm saying. I'm saying that a lot of it was destroyed.
You're saying the Romans hijacked Judaism and created Christianity. Is that where you're coming from?
Hijacked the group that believed the messianic prophecies were fulfilled. They were called followers of the way, or Nazarenes. They tried to kill them. They didn't really die off. And then they hijacked that belief. So Judaism with the messianic fulfillment, and then created Christianity, yes. And it wasn't easy. They changed everything. This is the rabbit hole I fell down. Like I said, I had a bias against the scriptures. I still do have a bias against religion. I think religion sucks, but when you dig deeper, you find out that those group of people, they messed with a lot of stuff, and why did they mess with it so much? It is kind of the question to me that with pattern recognition, I'm like, okay, well, they're hiding what it really says. But yeah, that's my position.
They kept the parts of the Bible where there was a historical Jesus, and they meddled with or discarded the parts that indicated of the original Christianity that he was a mythological figure. I think that's one of the biggest meddlings that happened.
That's interesting. So, I mean, you would have
because the historicist, there was competing sects. There's a diversity of Christianities. And this is why in 2 Peter, it says that, here, let me pull up the exact thing. Sorry. Were you going to go ahead?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I understand. You're saying there are texts that were kind of not compiled with the group of texts that kind of allude to him being mythological or celestial, and they intentionally left those out.
Like the lost books that Epiphanius talks about of the Ebionites, called the Ascents of James, makes me think that the original Christians, James and Peter, and maybe even the 12, Paul mentions a 12, but never disciples. But there's a 12. There was also a Essene sect of 12 too. 12 is a common number because of the zodiac and the 12 tribes of Israel. But that 2 Peter verse, so that early on in Christianity's beginnings, there were already other Christian sects that believed Jesus didn't come in the flesh. And there were the Docetists, which believed that he was more of like a spiritual figure, not really fully human or some shit. So it's 2 Peter 1:16. For we did not follow cleverly devised stories when we told you about the coming of our Lord Jesus, Christ in power, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. So we do not follow cleverly devised stories. This is Peter talking to another Christian sect that believed that they were making fake stories about the mythical Christ and that he didn't come in the flesh. It wasn't about the flesh, that he only came in the flesh, but in the heavenly realm as a cosmic Messiah, celestial archangel type figure.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I do find the idea interesting. Carrier, it is correct in that there were groups of people that believed that, but they were a minority, right? Like the notion that it was the popularly held belief is not the case, right? Like it was a minority, and we have minority fringe extremist interpretations of everything. And not to say that some of the writers didn't think that. That's not proof of that. I'm just saying it wasn't like everyone thought that. People thought that the prophecies are a literal physical Messiah. In fact, of course, they still think that, right? And they think that they're going to have some political leader that takes over the world. And so like that's
but books like Hebrews and Paul's epistles and First and Second Peter, James, Jude, they don't talk about an earthly preacher that did the stuff that you find in the Gospels. It really is talking about like a firstborn, creator, logos type of figure, which is like this intermediary between God and people, also that can come down in the lower heavens. At one point, since you mentioned Scripture, I have a couple of verses, Old Testament verses, that I would like to share that are about Jesus, that show what the purpose of the Messiah in Jesus actually is, and that's to conquer the nations.
Okay, sure.
If I can get it there at some point.
Yeah, you can do it right now, man. Also, technically, you can share your screen if you want to, just for future reference. But so you can read it right now. But like so this is why I do know that we would have like a pretty productive, in-depth conversation about this. I want to just at least like at one point maybe transition to like more of the meta about what's going on in the world today and stuff. But we can definitely stay on this right now, and then maybe like
this is what's going on. The Abrahamic faiths have been dominating the minds of half the world for 1,700 years, and right now we have World War III about to break out because of the Holy Land between Russia, Iran, China versus the West. This is their end times prophecies. These Christian Zionists all over our government bowing down to a foreign people, a foreign wall, and when Armageddon or the rapture to happen. Like lunatics like John Hagee are like the most politically connected Christians in our country.
Dude's insane. Dude is insane.
It's a death cult. It's a Jewish Judeo death cult.
Yeah,
that's dominating the West via Christianity,
insane.
Which is Torah Messianism. It is Judaism for Gentiles.
Well, I see. That's what I'm saying. I really agree with you on all of that. And that's why I think there's a middle ground for us to people that are kind of like me and yourself, and people that think like you, to come together with the same overarching goal, which is to expose all of that, which is the actual root of our problems right now, right? Like I would say the fact that I think, oh well, yeah, all of that's ridiculous, and they had to brainwash people into believe that's what it says, and they changed it, and they bastardized the scriptures to brainwash people with religion and blah blah blah. But I think there's truth in it. Like, shouldn't be like a hang up, because if we limit our numbers that much, where I think we would have a better chance of showing people, well, they just go read the stuff again without what they said, and you'll find out that's not what it says. And that's a little bit tougher or easier of a pill to swallow for people than just saying like, oh, it's just all fake. I hope I'm making sense to you. Like, I think that when it comes to the world setting right now, obviously what you just laid out is the most important thing to expose and speak out against. And a lot of people like me are in complete agreement with you on it. Like, Christian Zionism is super evil and insane. It doesn't say that there's a physical state of Israel it's going to be processed. It says that they got kicked out of their land, they'll never get it back. That's what it says. It says they don't get it back till the very, very end, whenever there's a new heaven and earth. That's why there are obviously some rabbis, Orthodox rabbis, that say, no, I'm not Zionist, that's evil. We don't have our land. We got it taken from us. So they had to come and change what it said and subvert it and make people think it says they get a physical state again, right? And so we would be in agreement with that. Like, no, they're not divinely chosen based on their ethnicity. They get to go take other people's land because of that. Right. And like, we are, and what's so crazy, it's such a clown world. We're tiptoeing on TOS, just talking about like what the scriptures say, like what they claim it says, you know? But anyway, that was a lot, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, I agree
talking about
with
the dominant, the most important conspiracy in the dominant religious institutions is blasphemy in this day and age.
It's insane that it's insane that you can't even still man what they claim to believe, or it's it's insane. And so, and that's why we can transition over in a few minutes. That way we don't have to like kind of tiptoe or anything. Am I
sharing screen right now?
Let me see. Wait up, I gotta find you. No,
I'm not.
No,
I thought it was.
Yeah, make sure it has permissions. I just set up this Discord like 2 days ago. I get deleted a lot on here, but you know how it goes.
Yeah, something weird's coming up.
What's the same?
Streaming HD. Oh, it says I have to get Nitro to do it. That's the problem, I think.
No way. What?
All right, I won't share screen.
It says you have to get Nitro to share your screen?
Yeah, that's what it said.
Okay, well, that's weird. I mean, if you want to send me something, I can share it for you. And also, I'll message the guy that set it up. Make sure it's not something that he set up. You shouldn't have to have like a paid anything to share your screen, I don't think.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't think so either. Maybe I'm just getting it wrong.
I don't know. If you want to send me something in the text that's above you,
it's not. It's stuff. It's a bunch of different tabs that I have open.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll figure it out. I got a guy that'll pop in and he'll try to make sure there's no settings, and hopefully that'll work out. You're just pressing the obviously the share your screen, the little box with the arrow.
Yeah, share screen, and then I do screens, and I select it, and then another page comes up, and it says screen 2, guest stream, smoother video, and then it says stream in HD resolution with Nitro. So it's like,
oh yeah, but that's just like I guess to get a better resolution.
Yeah, but
I don't know, because when I share screen, it works. So it may be like a setting thing, you know what I'm saying? Like your role or whatever. I'm gonna have my guy come in here if he can.
All right.
But,
well,
like,
I'm being boomer tech, so let's just.
No,
I
mean,
could just do it. It's
it.
just a couple verses. People can look it up if they want. Just a couple highlights from prophecies that they interpreted to be about Jesus to show like what the role of the Moshiach is, what the purpose of the Messiah is, which is to have dominion over the nations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this will help people realize, like, this is when I say it's a messianic conspiracy of Judaism wanting to, their main goal is all the nations in the end of times will worship their God. And their top rabbis say Christianity and Islam help prepare the world for the messianic age, got them believing in the God of Abraham, Israel. So
yeah, absolutely.
I don't have to share it.
I 100% see your point and yield to it a lot. And that's what I was telling Jaron too. I do obviously like I said, we disagree, but on certain things. But that part of it I don't disagree with, and I also see why you think it's important to not just like leave Christianity out of it. The obvious one is the Zionism, the modern Zionist Christian thing, right? But also you're saying that just in general, it's like it's the umbrella of the Abrahamic deception and the Messianic deception, and that's who they say is going to usher in basically their one world. And like I agree with that. I would say actually the idea though that another guy already fulfilled it is ideologically opposed to that, right? Like it's like, oh well, no, someone doesn't come take over the world. That guy's already here. And what it's saying, you know, in the context of the actual languages, the original languages, is like, oh, well, he returned and then he like reigns for a certain period of time. He returns when there's a new heaven and earth. So like, that's not just what I think. That's just what the original language says. And so often in both Judaism and modern Christianity, their beliefs do not say what the original languages say, whether it's real or fake. It's been messed with for people to control other people, right? That's what I'm saying. I think we can align. You know what I mean? Like we can align in that. Obviously, that's insane. I can't even say it bluntly. I can't say it bluntly but like that belief on its face is insane, right? That like you're gonna have a certain amount of slaves, and based on their ethnicity, and you're gonna take over the whole world, and you can do whatever you want. Basically, the list, the definition, the defining list on the State Department, right? Like 4 or 5 of the points on the defining anti-Semitism list is just what they claim to believe. Well, like I will say this also. What do you think about this?
One of them is like no conspiracies about them ruling the world or wanting to rule the world, and it's like I guess you can't read from the Torah then.
Yeah, or you can't like
the Torah is all about,
bro. Or you can't mention like even the mainstream Judaism beliefs. Like you can't even.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's insane, bro. Like it's very interesting. It definitely needs to be called out. I say we transition. Let's see. We have 5 on YouTube. We have almost 3 on Rumble, and then we have 100 on Rockfin. So I know that probably 350 to 4 will come off YouTube. So if you're down, I mean, I think we're doing a decent job, but we just can't really finish it out. I feel like we're tiptoeing.
Okay, you want to go super deep to the super hardcore stuff. Really, that would be talking about like Kabbalah secrets.
Sure, yeah, like
that's the stuff that might be iffy for YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I just want to fully lay out exactly what the
Well, let me
group
finish
that.
with just a couple verses there,
Sure,
a couple
sure.
Old Testament verses that I think people need to hear and can
Mhm.
look into. So, first one is Psalm 110. It says, verse 4, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Jesus is identified as the priest in the order of Melchizedek in Hebrews in the New Testament. And it says, the Lord said to my Lord, so to his Messiah, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. So before Christianity, who were the enemies of the chosen people, of the Judeans? It was the Romans, it was the Greeks, it was the Gentiles, right? And who Jesus has now made the Gentiles his footstool. Enemies, that's the enemies, that's where he's ruling. It says in verse 2, the Lord will extend your mighty scepter, that's like Messiah from Zion, saying, rule in the midst of your enemies. Who does Jesus, the Melchizedek Messiah, rule over today? Rome, who was the enemies of the ancient Judeans. That
Okay,
became
that's your Sam.
right. And then it also says, the Lord is at your right hand. He will crush kings on his day of wrath, the kings of the world, non-Jewish kings. He will judge the nations, or the Goyim, heaping up the dead and crushing the rulers of the whole earth. So that's a verse. Ask any Christian and they'll agree that is about Jesus. That verse where it says you're a priest in the order of Melchizedek, the footstools ruling the land of your enemies, they all agree that is Jesus.
Yeah.
And listen to what it says. It's all about conquering the enemies.
Mhm.
And who was Jesus invented for? The Gentiles.
Well, who his enemies are is going to be the question, right?
Who were their enemies before Christianity? Who was Paul's enemies? The Romans.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We have a fundamental different perspective. Like you're looking at it from like, well, this is fictional and it's based on back then, whereas I would interpret it as there's going to be an order that tries to take over the whole world and hates him. They're satanic, and then he comes back and rules over them. And like I said, we certainly don't agree on that, but you can understand that belief is not beneficial to them, though. You see what I'm saying? Like so we are on the same team in that sense. My belief is that the Catholic Church, which means universal, is satanic, and it's not just randomly satanic. It's specifically engineered to be satanic, and it inverts the scripture, as does the Babylonian Talmud. They're both directly inversions of what it says in the scripture. And so I think that they're satanic. I have a nuanced take here where it's like Muslims, Judaism, mutual destruction. That's inevitable, right? And then who's left standing? Well, it's like the universal church. The universal church is the one that's left standing. It's the one that no one's paying attention to. It's the one that they call them Christians. So they view it like the outsider of the Middle Eastern conflict, but they're actually not. And the Babylonian Talmud and the Catholic doctrine overlap a lot, and they claim to be enemies. And you get into the Jesuits, pretend to be both sides. So I know it's a lot, but I'm just saying
what the original Christianity was if all we have are the Gospels that were in the control of the Roman Catholic Church.
No, that's a decent point. Yeah, like I think that there are Hebrew versions that are MIA. But I guess what I think about that.
Then again, you don't know if they're MIA. You don't have them, and you
Correct.
don't know what was in them.
No, absolutely. I don't. One's been found in the Vatican junk drawer, the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, and there's slight differences, and they're very tactical differences. But that's the only one I've ever heard of.
Was that a Matthew that was just translated into Hebrew though?
Well, I guess that may be
original Hebrew Matthew from before the canonical Matthew.
That's a good question, right? Because the whole dating it is debated, obviously. I can definitely send you that though, because it's interesting either way that the Vatican kind of had like a Hebrew version of Matthew, and I'll show you the guy that kind of breaks it down and studies it. It's a lot the same. But there are differences, and the differences make you think that the Greek comes from the Hebrew, because, like, for example, it tactically removes an apostrophe, a Hebrew apostrophe that changes a singular pronoun to a plural, which basically says it makes the Bible contradict itself and tell you to listen to the Sadducees. But the Hebrew version says don't listen to what they say or do what they do. But the English kind of contradicts itself. Even the KJV just blatantly contradicts itself. If you see what I'm saying, it actually, the differences make it look like the Greek came after the Hebrew. So I am the first to admit, I think that there is no one can say, oh, I know the Bible is perfectly preserved by the Creator and it's perfect. It's not. But I will say, I think the vast majority of their tricks were done with the translations themselves. If you go look at the Gospels and then you start going back to the Greek, what it says in the English is wrong. And not just randomly wrong, very tactically wrong to push the Trinity, to push that Jesus is God, to push these certain beliefs where it doesn't say that in the Greek. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I think that you wouldn't do that if you just completely changed it. I think they had to keep some of it, and they tactically changed it. And some things they couldn't change well enough, they would just remove that verse, or they removed entire books, stuff like that. Does that make sense? So I'm not claiming to have like a definitive knowledge of what is completely in perfect condition, right? Like I think it's all like under the umbrella of, well, they controlled it, right? There's no way for us to know. But that's why I again, the foundation of my belief, bro, is anecdotal spiritual experiences that like really no one's ever going to be able to take away from me. I think that the creator just wants, this is why people get triggered on my channel when I talk about you, or I bring you up, or what I was going to have you on, just because like, as in the Christians, certain Christians. And I'm like, well, dude, I like Adam, because as far as I can tell, you believe what you say and you're trying to find the truth and you're like trying to expose deception and evil. And that's cool with me. That's what I think the creator wants. I don't think the creator wants people claiming to know things that they don't, or speaking for him, or like, being really dogmatic and religious. So like, I think we align more than you would think. It's very similar to my relationship with Jaron. You and Jaron agree on a lot. Me and Jaron are like really, really good friends, because I don't have beef with you. I know it was a bit of a rant, but like I don't think, like I told you before, I don't think that you just find a book and lucky you found the book, or lucky you got the book right. If you don't get the book right, you're screwed. Like I don't think that the creator hates religion and hates people doing stuff like that. So.
Yeah, you didn't get convinced of the ancient mythical hard to believe storybook and have faith. You failed the test. You're going to be punished.
Yeah,
you didn't believe that. You didn't believe in the nation of priests and the ancient Jewish prophets. Sorry, you lose.
Yeah, I don't think it's like that. I think that it's about being having a love for the truth, meaning like you kind of update as you find out new things, and then you like have a personal relationship with the creator. Right, I think that's what it is.
One thing you said, though, you mentioned that you thought the Greek looked like it came from the Hebrew. A lot of the Greek New Testament is actually verbatim, word for word, quoted from the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. So that would show that it wasn't. And a lot of the arguments that are made in the Gospels, or the word usage, shows that they were using the Greek translation and not the Hebrew understanding, because then it wouldn't have made sense with the language. But can I do one more verse? One more cool verse? Psalms 2. Psalms 2, another one that's about Jesus, because in verse 7 it says, "You are my son, today I have become your father." Just like similar to when Jesus is baptized in the Gospels and God says, "You are my son." That's a citation of Jesus. Right after that, "You are my son, today I have become your father. I will make the nations," the Goyim, "your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. Therefore, you kings, be wise, be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling." So again, Jesus, the Messiah, is all about conquering the nations, conquering the kings, the Gentile kings around the world, and then having them celebrate his rule with fear and trembling. Mm-hmm. And he's a God-fearing man. He fears the Lord. We're all fearful of the threat of eternal punishment if we don't believe in these prophecies and the blood magic atonement scapegoat rituals. In fear and trembling, having the nations in fear of your God, that's a subversion. Convincing the nations that you're the only group of people, the nation of priests, that can speak for God, that you're the special children of God, that your homeland is the Holy Land, that God's treasured possession. So, I mean, come on, celebrate his rule with fear and trembling. That's what their goal was. There's another verse about licking the dust before their feet, the Messiah's feet, chosen people's feet. Like this is what Christianity is based on. Prophecies like this that is clearly not open to interpretation, all about conquering the nations.
Sure. Well, yeah, the only interpretation is like the timeline, right? I understand that to mean that there will basically be a satanic one world order, And then I think we would agree, like, even if you think it's not real, they're using it as some type of playbook, right? As they clearly condition us to have some type of digital identifier to buy, sell, and trade, and they're moving us towards like an international kind of thing. But anyway, I would say that that's what it's talking about. The super powerful evil people that are basically satanic that
I don't
end
think
up
they're doing
taking
it in the name of Satan, though. I think they're doing it in the name of Yahweh. They believe they're
Yeah.
chosen by Yahweh. These goals of the temple and the Moshiach and
Oh, sure, them.
you know,
Yeah,
technology
yeah, okay.
and you know, Jerusalem, the center of the earth. That's not a satanic agenda. That's the Yahweh agenda.
Yeah,
That's
but this is what I'm saying.
Torah,
Don't you think they
Judaism
know,
agenda.
Adam? Don't you think they know they're doing evil stuff though? Right?
I think they've twisted it in their heads that all of us are evil and hate them for no reason, and that they're chosen and special, so they're justified. They
in
don't
whatever
see
they
what
do.
they're doing as evil. No.
Yeah, like the end justify the means and or something.
Mhm.
I guess. Like I would say there's no way that kind of like what they're doing right now, for example, right? They know it's evil. They know that they claim to believe what they do because it makes them the special ones. It puts them over everyone else. It says that they're going to get to rule. It gives them the right to lie and subvert and cheat. And I think they know that. I like so when I say they may not literally think they're worshiping Satan, but they are like that. Like they're acting on behalf of evil. And
He
I
might
think
as well be Satan, but it's
Yeah.
I think to call it Satan gets people kind of caught in the construct. Like Satan is the adversary to Yahweh. Yahweh created him. He plays a role in the Judeo paradigm as well, but it's like his controlled opposition that gets scapegoated. So we're all saying, "Oh, their satanic agenda," when it's really I see it just as the Yahweh Torah agenda. These verses that I'm reading to you right here.
Yeah, like I said, like clearly what our major difference here is like I think I'm gonna have like every one of the interpretations you're gonna lean more towards like the Judaism type of interpretation, and I'm not. I think that the Babylonian Talmud's wrong. I think that what the Messiah came and did was said like you guys are wrong about everything.
Too. I think it's wrong too. No, I'm not doing. I mean, Christianity is Jewish too. So to say it's a Jewish interpretation,
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I know what the Christians. When I'm talking about what the Christians believe, I'll give their interpretation. Or if I'm talking about what the rabbis believe, I'll tell you what their interpretation is.
Sure.
But I don't like believe in one and not the other.
No, I get it. I'm saying what I would say is I would agree with you on both of your critiques in that situation, and I think that I know it sounds a bit like, of course you think you're the one that got it right, and you're one of the, you're the small group that gets it right, but that's what I think it is. I think that as you critiqued what the Christians believe, you would probably be representing modern Christianity pretty accurately. Like that Jesus. Well, for one, that Jesus is God, and there's the Trinity.
Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about in Daniel 7:13. Where it talks about the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, right? This is clearly about Jesus. The New Testament, Mark, the first gospel, Mark, mentions Jesus as the Son of Man like over 10 times. That's the whole theme. And it says, he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations, goyim, and people of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Christians say this is about Jesus, but rabbis also interpret this verse and say it's going to be about their Messiah.
Mhm.
And what is the goal? All authority, all glory, dominion over all of the world, all of the nations. That's the goal. That's the takeover conspiracy. That's the messianic conspiracy.
But the Christian interpretation is that is like post return of the Messiah. So it's like new heaven, new earth. That's after like major destruction. I get
who was the enemies of the Judeans before Christianity? Right before Christianity started, who was their enemy?
Pretty much everyone. Right.
It was Rome. Rome was their main enemy.
Sure, yeah, sure.
They occupied them. They were the ones that destroyed their temple. So Rome was their enemy. Their Messiah was meant to conquer the enemy and have dominion over them and have the enemy worship him and be their footstool and rule in the land of their enemies. And where has Jesus been ruling the last 1700 years? From Rome, from the Vatican.
Yeah, I get that. And that's why they would say that it's going to fall. Edom, Rome will fall, right? And because that's
at the
Messiah
end of the
will come.
the 2,000 years.
Yeah,
once it's served its role.
Yeah, see, and so I'm just telling you what I think the scripture plainly says is in the original language is that he came, but he hasn't completely fulfilled the position of Messiah until he returns. He returns basically after the world's been taken over by like crazy satanic people, and then he takes them out. And then what you're left with is like him being king. Okay. And I know you don't think
okay with that.
Well, with like all the evil people being taken out.
You say it like it's just that, but like that's what the rabbis want. Their Moshiach to come, conquer evil, and rule the world from ever in the Messianic age from Jerusalem.
Well,
it's like the same thing. The same Davidic prophecies. The rabbis are waiting for the Messiah. That's what Christians believe is going to come in the second coming also.
Yeah, but you agree it's different though, right? Like one's saying that there
slight
is
differences, yes, but for the most part, it's all based on Torah prophecies of the Messiah.
Sure, but the big difference being that there's like they want to bring about evil to expedite, and there are some Christians that are like that, right? They're like, yeah, let the Middle East blow up, whatever, then Jesus will come, but they want to expedite evil. They think that makes the Messiah come. They think the Messiah is going to come, and the current humans.
That's the Sabbateans. You'll see the Chabadniks say that if they do more mitzvahs, that will bring the Messiah.
Okay, so
more kindness and goodness will bring the Messiah, or stuff like that.
Okay.
That's not like Orthodox view that they need to.
They
do have the view that the Messiah will come when either the whole world's good or the whole world's evil, but it was the Sabbateans that are said to have like actually tried to implement
that. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So like what the difference is still that they think that the current people that are living here right now in the current state of things, that there's going to be a human that comes up, he's a political leader, he takes everyone over by force. That's the other side of it saying, well, there's like a resurrection, there's like resurrected bodies, there's like a new heaven, a new earth. This is after all these evil kingdoms have taken over the world. He comes back and basically stops them from killing everyone on the earth, right? And I'm just saying that's obviously different. Like that is not the same as all of the humans that live right now are going to be my slaves, and it's completely different. And what I'm saying is that interpretation isn't really it wouldn't even be your enemy in the sense that they think that this is the craziest part of it all. We're going to have to move over, but the craziest part to me is, and why I really want to do this stream is, they have the Christians believing that the group who's saying they're going to bring their Messiah is the person that they should support, say against like the Muslims who say that Jesus was a Messiah, right? Was the Messiah. But in the scriptures, that would be the Antichrist. So they have the Christians supporting the group that are bringing the false Messiah, that would be the Antichrist, against the group who claims that they're going to bring the Antichrist and that Jesus was the Messiah. So to me, I see like a path of solution there, meaning that it's like, well, no, the modern Christians have been deceived, and whether their stories are true or not, if they can at least be woken up to the fact that they're misinterpreting their story, you see what I'm saying? But then we may have a more seamless transition to getting out of this. To try to get the whole West to change.
You can fight over interpretation forever, though. I think it's better just to show that this stuff is mythological and it's not real. I feel like that's the more effective way of getting people to not fall for the prophecy deception anymore.
Maybe so. We I mean,
if it's so easy to convince people of like good interpretation of prophecy, then why has the bad fake Christians? Why are they dominating so much? Why is one religion? Why are they the ones with all the influence? And it's because they get support from other Abrahamic sects, but also I don't think telling them they're wrong about end times prophecy is the solution to it.
I hear you.
I think it's better to say prophecy's not real. Enough with the obsession with end times wars.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you're not going to convince those people, right? Like,
I just all the time.
No, I don't dispute that. I don't dispute that. And I would say this: people are going to trigger people in my chat. I'm pro you doing that, meaning that like I'm pro you convincing people to let go of this like previous belief they had that wasn't well researched, wasn't founded, and wasn't real, and was just some like brainwashed religious belief. That's a step in the right direction to me. I just think if you keep going, you'll eventually find like, oh, they're scared of the scriptures, they had to change it, and the creator wants a personal relationship with you, etc. What I'm saying, though, you see what I'm saying, right? How insane is it if you just step back from whether or not it's real? They have a group of people that call themselves Christians supporting another group that claim that Jesus was the false Messiah. They claim that they're going to bring their Messiah. And then according to the Christian's book, it actually says that guy will be the Antichrist. So they have the Western Christian Zionists supporting a group that's going to bring about what they would consider the Antichrist, in opposition to a group that claims that Jesus was the Messiah and will come back to fight the Antichrist. So it's so insane to me that they've pulled that off. And that's like a major path to solution, is what I'm saying. Like, waking them up to realize, like, you're supporting the group that would bring the Antichrist according to your own scriptures against the group that
but they have
agrees.
incentive to do that.
Why would psychopaths do, Adam? Psychopaths.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, people that are really eager to have Jesus return because they love him so much and they want God's prophecies to be fulfilled. It makes sense that some of them would be motivated to help make that happen.
That's insane, bro. That's insane. Like, just imagine if, say, you did think that, like, say that he was the Messiah or whatever. Like, would you really want the world to just get destroyed and tons of innocent women and children die and all this crazy stuff happens so that he can come back? You would try to expedite that or support an evil group in the Middle East because that might make it happen faster? That is, like, evil, bro. Right? Even if you think the Messiah is real, that's still just, like, psychopathic to me. You can't help
psychopathic. Like, what about Isaiah 45? It says, they will bow down before you and plead with you, saying, surely God is with you, and there is no other God. There is no other God. That's where Christianity, before me, verse 23 and 24, before me every knee will bow, by me every tongue will swear. That's later on in the New Testament written about Jesus, but from the context of Isaiah, 600 years after Babylon, Isaiah, 600 years, the Judeans were the only people that believed in Isaiah and were waiting for a Messiah. And what did they want the Messiah to do? Get all of the nations, every knee bowing down. And it literally says it verbatim in the New Testament, quotes this. And that's what Christians are doing. Proud sheep following their messianic shepherd, who is the king of the Jays, who is the incarnation of the God of Israel. That was the whole goal to begin with. You agree with that? The whole goal of Judaism and the Torah and Yahweh is all the nations worshiping him?
Yeah. Because it says that's the one true creator. The incarnation of God thing I don't agree with, but that's just like in general, that is the idea. But you would agree, of course, like if say that there was like a one true creator, obviously it would be better that we all serve that creator. Now, I think that names and books and religions don't change that if someone really wants to, figure out if there's a real creator or have a relationship with the real creator, that they can't. And actually, what's funny though, the book says that. The book says you don't have to have the book, like the book, the Bible. It says you don't have to have the book and you don't have to know the name of the creator. All you have to do is look around and know there's a creator. So, and then Torah means instruction. So it's like an instruction manual that you don't necessarily have to have. Like, I could have built my desk without it, but the instruction manual made it much easier. That's what it actually says. It doesn't say you need to know his name. It doesn't say you need to do any rituals. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says that you'll know by looking around that someone made this place, right, for you. And you should just be like, wow, thank you. Basically, that's what it says, right? It says no man is with excuse for, just looking around in nature, you can see that this place was created. And you don't need to know the name of the creator. So I think that's a much more beautiful message. That's what's actually at the core of it. And it's been so twisted by people. And it took hundreds of years of people changing it to make it this really evil, dogmatic, like controlling thing. And that's why I don't blame anyone that's like, this sucks, let's throw it all out. I just think it may be a little deeper.
Amazing, and beautiful sunsets and all types of great things, but there's also lots of bad things about creation.
Yeah, that gets into a philosophical point of like, I've thought of this. The alternative would be to not let bad things happen, right? But in order to do that, I guess you would have to like intervene, and so then you would step on free will. Like as insane as it is, people do things like kill people, right? So someone's gonna go kill someone. Well, like that's awful. So to stop it, I may have to reset.
Couldn't there be a way to have free will where there's still justice, where it's only if you use your free will to do something bad, you get held accountable. Justice comes to you.
Sure. Just I guess what I'm saying is to stop bad things from happening across the board, you have to intervene and stop other people from having free will, even the people that would do the bad things. And I guess you could argue that that would be better, but I don't know. I think it's easy to say that without experiencing it. That would kind of make us robots. Like we could never do anything wrong. I don't know. I don't think we can understand the idea of trying to create all of existence. But if we did, like would we make everyone
when
robots?
You do something wrong. Well, first of all, this kind of takes me back to the Garden of Eden story. Like God created Adam and Eve. He put him in there. He allowed Satan in, created Satan, allowed Satan in there. He put the tree there as the temptation. Like, so he created them, put this test in front of them, knowing what they would do. And then you're going to blame them for it. So blame them for the fall, blame people for free will. Like you could have free will without having, mosquitoes spread disease all over the world.
Yeah.
That's part of creation that I'm not too fond of.
Mosquitoes are interesting. Yeah.
Blood-sucking mosquitoes or... Yeah,
certain insects, even like wasps. But I will say, I think that if you really think about it, to prevent evil altogether, you have to remove free will. Because why don't, if you do something wrong, you get punished. But what if what they do wrong is to someone else or causes displacement that hurts someone else?
Okay, so what's with the whole test though? God's hiding. Yeah. He makes it look like he doesn't exist. Doesn't give us any good proof on him. We got ancient books. Nobody can agree on what God is or what he says.
Yeah.
And he's just testing us all because he needs to be loved. He wants it to be authentic, real love. So he tests everybody.
I don't interpret it like that. I think like this. Say there were angels and say there are humans, right? The angels would look down and they'd be like, how is that fair? They don't have to know that you're true. They don't have to believe in you. They can mess up. They can do all kinds of, they have a huge range of human emotion, make babies fail, all this stuff, right? And they get to keep on learning from their mistakes. But we don't get that. We don't get the choice of whether or not we follow you or know you're real. You're right here. We know you're real. Then the humans look up and they're like, how is it fair that the angels get to know God's real because they're right around him? And, they're already immortal and stuff. And then the angel's like, well, yeah, but you get to be immortal afterwards and you get to experience mortality. And then we're like, but you already don't have to suffer. And so there would be no way to win is what I'm saying. Like either you're allowed to freely roam and then decide. Like there's actually a belief in one of the texts that were removed that says that you basically chose to come here and you were warned that it's kind of risky. I'm not saying that I believe that or don't, but it's an interesting idea. Would it be worth the risk to come here, and like, I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you get to make your own decision.
Here's another problem with the free will argument is like, we don't really have free will to believe in Jesus or not. It's not free will. You either believe it or you don't. I don't have the will. I can't will myself into believing in Jesus. I would have to lie to myself. I would have to lie to everybody else because you can't make yourself believe something that you don't really believe.
Yeah, well, he would never want. I think he would never want you to do that.
It's not a choice. It's not free will.
Yeah, well, I think it is, right? Because I do now, and dude, if you had to ask me 5 years ago, I mean, I would have bet you everything in the world. I never would. It was personal experiences that I just decided to step back, reconsider, and then pursued further. And then I had like crazy things happening to me directly in response to what I was saying and praying that I changed my mind, right? I don't think he wants you to pretend to believe in something or to go to a church and be like, oh, it must be true, or let me repeat some words and pretend I believe in it. So maybe if heaven's real, I'm safe. None of that's real. Why would the creator, if there's a creator, you think he's like going to be tricked by you? Like, oh, he said he believed in me. Yeah, it's stupid.
That's like Pascal's wager. They go, well, maybe God's real, maybe it's not, but I'm just going to hedge my bets and believe in him so that if he's real, I don't go to hell. Exactly. It's like God's like, hey, good decision there. You didn't really believe in me, you didn't really love me, but you didn't want to go to hell, so you said you believed. Like that's good enough.
It's insane. That's why I tell you. That's why I said like I support you. I speak good about you. Same thing with Jaron, even though we disagree. Because I think that you're not supposed to do that. I would side with you way more than like a Christian that just says they're Christian because of kind of the reasoning that you just laid out. I'm way more aligned with you because I just know that that's not the way it is. That's not true. That's not what the creator would want. The creator wants you to keep learning, keep figuring things out. And I really don't think any of us will have it all figured out when we leave. But I think that you're supposed to I think this is an important part, that you have a love of the truth and you're always willing to be like, oh, I learned something new or was shown something new, so maybe my position gets updated now. Maybe I was wrong or whatever. Like as long as you're constantly in the pursuit of like learning and maybe being wrong about things, then I think you're good.
It's funny that from Christians you'll hear like they believe in prophecy. All of Judaism and Christianity is rooted in prophecy, the prophecy of the Messiah, the prophecy of the end times. But then they'll also say free will. But I don't see, it doesn't make sense logically that you could have prophecy, so predestination, God's plan that has to happen, but then you also have free will. Like, did the ancient Judeans, the Pharisees, did they have free will to believe in Jesus or not? Or is Jesus right when he says in the scripture, he says the scriptures must be fulfilled and he needs to be rejected by his people?
Yeah, that's an age-old
prophecy said they had to reject him from what the scriptures foretold. Did they really have a choice or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an age-old philosophical question, right? Like I would say you can know what's going to happen without dictating that it happens. Like,
so he knows that they're going to do it, and still creates them, knows what they're going to do, and then punishes them for it.
Well, they got to choose, right? Like I guess the alternative would be to not exist.
They didn't get to choose. It's like that's like saying God knows that they chose before they actually chose.
Yeah, I know it's a crazy concept. It is a crazy concept, but also like the idea that something's not limited to space, time, and matter, they're outside of time and they created everything, is also just a crazy concept. Like to try to understand it, and I know that sounds like a cop-out. It's not. It's like realistically, you wouldn't be able to understand it. If you could be omnipotent, would that necessarily mean that you were personally dictating everything that happens, or are omniscient? Or would you like just know what someone was going to do, right? And then they went through all their own decisions.
Just like God created Adam and Eve knowing that they were going to be tempted by the snake and fall for it, yet he created them anyway and then blamed them for how he created them. That's why I went back to there.
Yeah, I hear you. The alternative would be no creation. That's what, like I don't think you could create.
You wouldn't need to explain free will, because with no creation, no God, there would be random stuff like mosquitoes and diseases.
Oh, but I mean, yeah, but
and
I can debunk
childbirth.
I can debunk. I can debunk atheism very easily with science, the second law of thermodynamics, and that's a very long discussion. But I will say, like, examining the laws of nature prove that there's something that's external and supernatural to this universe that had to create the matter and energy that was here. That something had to violate natural law, which means supernatural. Now, when you get into what is it benevolent? Is there a certain religion that's right? Does it have a name? Is it personable? Well, these are different discussions. But as to it being created, I would say is undeniable. It's undeniable, and I can't get an atheist to debate me about
that's missing the point. I was giving a hypothetical that if there was no God, we wouldn't. The explanation of free will, people being able to make decisions, doesn't need some complicated excuse for it. It's just we would have free will if there's no God. You don't need to come up with some explanation for it.
Sure, I agree. And like, I guess even technically you could say a malevolent creator. You wouldn't have to explain it because he would let you suffer because he doesn't care about you, or even an apathetic creator. But I also, what I'm saying is I think that if it's profound, but actually if you keep going, even a benevolent creator has no choice. It's either make you free or make you a robot. Don't create or create. Think about it. If you have something inside you that lives on forever, we can complain right now because we don't really see it. But imagine being outside of it, you'd be like, oh wow, what a blessing. I got to experience that and this. When I was there, I didn't know. Like I think that even with the benevolent creator, there is no alternative. When you start thinking about what's the alternative is being a robot, which would be miserable. There'd be no point existing, right? If we were just robots. And then this other alternative is just don't even make creation in the first place. And then you get into, well, why would a creator want to make creation? That's a good question. Maybe he can experience like the experiential value of experiencing things that he couldn't. Like limit, like he could experience things through us because he's limited or whatever. I don't know. These are age-old, profound questions that are outside of us. But yeah,
he's either omniscient, evil, or doesn't exist. That's kind of the way that people summarize it.
Yeah, and I would say omniscient, and just it's easy to judge that position because we don't really notice everything that's involved. But.
You could still, hypothetically, if you were God, you could still create a world where only like you give people free will, but only the people that do bad things have bad things happen to them. And the people that are good aren't, some type of divine intervention where they're not negatively affected by the people that choose to do evil things.
Right. Yeah. So divine intervention would be it just would be, say someone wants to do something bad, and what if that bad is harming someone else? You'd have to intervene and prevent that person from. Now, I also
stop the baby from being abused.
I get it. Yeah, I get it, brother. Right. Like I kind of yield to that argument. Like,
and instead that guy gets zapped with a lightning beam or something right before he does it. Right. Yeah, that would be. I'd believe in God if that's the type of justice that was going on. Instead, you get your justice in the afterlife. Yeah, I care about this world, the one we know exists, and I'm not going to bet my life on what might be happening in the afterlife.
I think you get justice here too, though. I think that like even the powerful groups of people believe in that, like natural law. I just think sometimes it takes longer than we want. It's
we're more usually man-made justice, though. Plenty of bad people get away with hurting good people.
Sure, but like, who's to say? Did they suffer like the last 2 years of their life with like excruciating cancer? Like, did they go insane for like the last? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Some did, and some probably didn't.
Maybe so. And then that brings the question, like, what happens after here? And then what I think actually is either you continue to exist forever, or you cease to exist as if you never existed. I think that before you leave here, you've basically had a fair opportunity to make that decision on this like deep way that we don't know. And so maybe, you did all this crazy stuff here. Now you don't exist anymore. What's interesting about it is the people that kind of run the world, if you will, behind the scenes, doesn't really seem to be as much specific group, although clearly we have red flag on a major group and a second runner up. It's an ideology, and it's like this idea that you can have both. Like you can rule the world, manipulate people subversively, control them, get what you want, wealth here, and then you can find some cheat code to the afterlife as well. Apotheosis, illumination, all this stuff. So yeah, I just think that's the antithesis of like I guess last thing I'll say about that is like, imagine if you take over the whole world and you steal from everyone and you're like a king and you have an amazing life and people are like, this dude's evil. Why is nothing bad happening to him? Well, yeah, what if he just like ceases to exist after that and then you get to exist forever? Well, you still won, right? I mean, he may have had a castle or whatever, but he lived for 50 years, 70 years, and like now you're not even limited to a body and live forever. Maybe you come back, who knows, right? So I don't know. I think these are things we can't understand. If
that's
there's
part
a creator,
of what makes Christianity appealing is you feel like there's divine justice in another world.
Sure, yeah.
It feels good to think, that evil, because it was popular among slaves a lot, or lowly people, peasants and stuff. So, right. Those kings or that tax collector or that guy that's persecuting me or enslaving me, like I'll go to heaven and he's going to go to hell. Right. That gives comfort in people that aren't living in good situations.
Right, like he'll get what's coming to him.
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure. I think that's not just for Christianity either, right? It's just for any like spiritual belief across the world forever, right? People want to know why we're here, like what's the purpose and what happens after we're here. And it's just like these innate questions that we always ask. That's what I say. I think life is a test in that sense. The test is just that you just are honestly trying to figure out what's going on, and then you try to do what's right. Very simple cliche answer, but that's what I think. Well, it's up to you if you want
to do things that's right because I feel like somebody's watching me and I'm being tested and there's a punishment if I don't. Mm-hmm. I try to do what's right because I want to live in a world where other people do what's right for me and my family, not because I'm being tested.
Well, I agree with you. Would you even really be doing what's right if you're doing it just to avoid punishment? Not really.
Right, you're just scared. You're just scared, and that's the way that they control people is through hell, basically.
Oh yeah, and I would agree with you on that as well. But I'm saying, like, dude, I'm just telling you, my experience is that the rabbit hole is Christianity brainwashes you. You can break out of it. You dig deeper. You find out, like, oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. People don't even really believe it. It's all fake. And you keep going. You're like, oh, all of it is lied about. Like, that's my current position. And that isn't just me randomly saying it. It's like years and years of me taking this verse, breaking all the Hebrew down, being like, why does it say the opposite of what it says in English, right? And why did they take this book out? So that's just my experience. And like Jaron's kind of seen it over the last couple of years because he'll come to me with like, say the slavery verses, right? I'm not trying to open up that can of worms because it's a longer conversation, but like the Leviticus and Exodus slavery verses. You read them in English, they just sound awful, like pure evil. But when you go and read it in context, it's totally different. It's totally different. And you ask yourself, well, why does it say that in English? Why does it make it sound like that in English? And that's just one example. Same with like...
You're saying the Hebrew, it's not...
Yeah.
I mean, I've had Jews on the show, and I'll read them a verse that I take issue with. And like Adam King did this, for example. He'll read it in his Hebrew, and he goes, yep, that's right. That's what it says. So,
yeah, but I will say that like modern Judaism is pretty crazy, bro. Frankly, it is.
I mean, the Torah, the Torah is crazy. Look at these verses. It's all about kings will see you and stand up, princes will see you and bow down, because of the Lord who is faithful, the Holy One of Israel. He has chosen you. That's right after the verse in Isaiah 49:6 where he will be a light to the Gentiles, that the salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. It's about, again, conquering the kings of the world.
Yeah, but it's again, my understanding is that it's after he returns in like a metaphysical state. There's a new heaven, new earth.
Was he not a light to the Gentiles already? Has Jesus not already been with the Gentiles for 2,000 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like I'm saying, he comes back, but he's just going to come back.
Has he not already conquered? Sorry to interrupt, but has he not already conquered all the kings of Europe and around the world? Christianity, like replacing the Roman emperor, basically worship with Jesus.
No, that's why I'm saying like Catholicism is like the inversion of the scriptures, and like I guess like I can't even think of a good counter argument. It's like, why did they lie about it? Why do they lie so much? Why does it say like rest on the final day, and they're like, okay, we'll rest on the first day, but we won't really rest? And in what?
Because in Judaism, the Gentiles aren't supposed to rest on the Sabbath. That's only for them. That's why.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
why they do it on a different
That's
day.
an appealing
That's
argument.
why there's so many things that are antithetical to Judaism, because it was created for the Gentiles, for the Romans, for Edom and Esau. And it's an inversion of Judaism because it wasn't created for them.
Right.
They're not supposed to circumcise, keep kosher, follow the commandments. They're drinking blood. All of these things kept a separation between Judaism and Christianity.
Yeah, but wasn't Rome like clearly in control at that time, right? Like the people that believed in the Messiah, they were killing them, right? Like they were just killing them, and then there was a fire. They blamed it on them, killed them some more, and so like I don't think the Jews really came and wrote Christianity, right? Like from my understanding, they took like...
Sure. Who do you think Peter was? Or who do you think Paul was, and Peter and James?
Sure, but I'm talking about the Catholic version, right? Because Peter and no one in the scripture is ever going to tell you to worship on Sunday and rest on Sunday. It never says anything like that. Like that's just like a made-up Catholic thing. And Sunday was a sun festival worship day in Rome from the polytheistic gods that track back to Babylon. That's where the Trinity comes from. That's where the man god comes from. That's Nimrod. It all comes from back to Babylon. They were like, okay, well, we'll take this belief and integrate it with ours, and then we'll take over, right? And I'm not removing blame from either group. It's just that the Catholic Church doesn't get off scot-free. To me, it doesn't jive.
That's the other reason. Why did they add in the Trinity? Because that makes Christianity idolatrous, and that's another way to discourage Jews from following Christianity, because they believe in the oneness of God and that man can't be a God, or God is, indivisible, can't be any other thing.
Yeah. Like basically that's idolatrous and polytheistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I do see the reasoning in what you're saying, that basically they made a Gentile version of the religion to keep them excluded from the truth because it's not for them. It definitely makes sense
to keep Jews away from it. And it was so clearly, I mean, the New Testament is the Great Commission is to go baptize all the nations. The Roman centurion is the first one that has like the greatest faith in Jesus. When Jesus is born, it has the wise men coming from the Gentile nations to bring gifts, while Herod is plotting the slaughter of the innocents. It's very anti-Jewish, and pro-Gentile. It was for Gentiles. It was written in Greek. Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. It may have originally started as a Jewish thing, but the version that we have, it definitely was oriented all about taking over theological conquest over the nations and the Gentiles.
Yeah, but what often happens is Jesus, he basically tells them, you were misinterpreting this the whole time. That's not what it meant. Right? He was calling out the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he's talking about the Torah or the Tanakh, the Old Testament, he's like, that's not what it meant. It's the Old Testament's a trick word anyway, but he's correcting them, right? He's like, no. It's not like he just made up new thing. Like the modern church, dispensationalism, Zionist, Jesuit trick, really a Jesuit trick. Like that's not a real thing, but they say it is, and there's a new covenant and an old covenant and all this. And like Jesus came to bring
a new Dune. Have you seen the new Dune?
No, I've been told to watch it by a lot of people though.
I saw it yesterday. It was I only went and watched it, and I just recently watched the first one too because everybody was saying it's like the best movie ever on Twitter. So I went and saw it, and I was even more impressed. And it was like one of the most amazing movies I've ever seen. And I don't want to spoiler alert too much, but there is a theme of basically a Jesuit order that's creating fake religions of messianic prophecies.
Wow,
I loved it.
That's
so
lit.
cool.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now too. That's what I think. I think I told you that even on the spaces. Well, we don't have much longer. Yeah, 2 hours. If you want to swap over 20 minutes, we can. I think it's a good conversation. Like I would also talk to you about even the early gospel thing, right? Like I think the late dating I don't fully agree with, but there's like a lot to that.
Tell me about that. That's YouTube friendly. You think the Gospels are written before the temple's destroyed?
Yeah.
Why?
A few reasons, but for one, so like the idea that it was written after. Obviously, he prophesies. The mainstream bias against it is that Jesus prophesizes the destruction of Jerusalem, and since prophecies are impossible, right? We know that it was written afterwards. That's just like an anti-supernaturalistic bias. And not that it couldn't be correct, it's just a bias. But what I see is that it's written before that for a few reasons. I don't want to get the parts wrong here. Let me see if I have some notes. But there are portions of even in the Gospels that don't make sense. Like let's say, for example, when they warned them of the destruction, and they start to tell them, hope this doesn't happen during the winter. Hope this doesn't happen in the Sabbath. When it's going to happen, make sure that people that are in the city get out and don't go in the city. But the story is
flee to the mountains, right? It says flee to the mountains.
Yeah. So the story is basically
prophecy from the Old Testament. That's fake prophecy taken from the Old Testament.
Right. So your argument would be, of course, that they were writing it as if it was before and prophesizing, but it had already happened, right? Because
it's easy to make prophecies of things after they already occurred.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But all right, let me find my. Yeah, this is a big one. But I will say there are like even atheist scholars, right, that don't fully support the early dating. So like from my understanding, like here I have the mainstream dates of the Gospels. We have, and I agree, Mark came first, right? So we have Mark 70 AD, Matthew 80 AD, Luke 85 AD, John 95 AD, and those have some like leeway, but those are the typically agreed upon dates. And the main argument again is like the anti-supernaturalistic interpretation that like obviously he can't prophesize the destruction of the temple in such vivid detail before it happened because he's not real. There is no metaphysical truth to it or whatever, right? So here I have like just to counter the argument though, like there was also so I have Jerusalem's downfall has happened before in 586 BC. In 2 Kings, Jeremiah prophesied the downfall of Jerusalem as a curse of breaking the law, and so this was like a reoccurring theme throughout. Texts that we would agree were way longer than 70 AD ago, right? Where they're like, you broke the law, it's gonna be you're gonna be destroyed, your city's gonna be destroyed. And then I don't want to get the book wrong, but in one of the Gospels, I think it's in Acts actually, right? So like everyone agrees that the same author of Luke wrote Acts, whether it's Luke or not. Most people agree with that. But either way, we have Acts, and he's talking about he mentions a prophecy, like a random prophet predicted the like there would be a famine, and he points out that like his prophecy of the famine came true. So like he points out that, but he wouldn't point out that like the primary character of his gospel's prophecy came true. So he points out like this random guy that was agreed to have happened in about the 40s AD around under Claudius or something. And he points out like this prophet said there'd be a famine and it happened, right? And so that gives you a date of Acts of a little after the 40s, but he wouldn't point out that the Messiah had his prophecies fulfilled. It's the same thing with the omission of Paul's death in Acts, right? Like it doesn't really make much sense to not talk about how he got killed if it was written after he got killed. There's a few arguments like that. like there is no slam dunk argument either way for the dating of the Gospels, but maybe you would interpret the prophecy being it. I don't, though, right? Obviously, I think even if it wasn't supernatural, you can predict what's going to happen. You can say, oh, you're not following the rules, you're going to be destroyed, and it happened. Like, it's not impossible. That doesn't prove that it was written later. So I know there's a bunch of random ones.
You're missing one of the biggest arguments as to why it's after the temple was destroyed.
Okay, let's hear it.
The fact that Paul doesn't mention anything about the war, which started in 66 AD. He doesn't mention anything about the destruction. Also, the book of Hebrews, it talks about, makes arguments why the temple sacrifices shouldn't be done anymore, implying that they were still happening. And Hebrews is written before the temple was destroyed as well. There's several other arguments Richard Carrier makes in his book about Hebrews and the dating on that. And so Hebrews argues in ignorance of what's in the Gospels, doesn't mention any of the same stories as the Gospels, just like Paul doesn't mention the biographical details in the Gospels. In many opportunities when it would have been very applicable if the Gospels were around, or if Paul knew of these biographical details that weren't invented until later were in the Gospels. But the fact that Paul doesn't mention him, Hebrews doesn't mention him, neither of them are aware of the Gospels, shows that that's pre-temple destruction, and Gospels starting with Mark is sometime after 70 AD when it was destroyed. That and the prophecy are the two big reasons.
Yeah, it's an interesting art. I mean, like that he should have included something. I mean, yeah, I agree. It seems like a pretty substantial thing that you would include. I would just say, obviously, that's not really definitive, though. I mean, from my understanding,
pretty definitive. If Paul didn't know about the gospel stories and Hebrews didn't, and they argue in ignorance of them,
well,
that's
I mean,
a pretty big deal.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that like the writing of the Gospels themselves had not taken place, right? Like,
and Paul was completely unaware of them.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know why we would assume he would be aware of them. I mean, if we look at the context of everything, he was actually kind of just running around, and he claims that his belief came from like supernatural things. So, I don't know. From my understanding, and like I said, I have like a whole thing of notes, and it would be a thing.
What was the thing you said about Luke? And you said in the Gospel of Luke, it says something. Oh, a famine.
Yeah. Let me read. It's kind of choppy notes here, but I say, according to Acts 11:27 through 28, there was a group of prophets who traveled from Jerusalem to Antioch, and the author reports that Agabus received the gift of prophecy and predicted a severe famine, which occurred during the reign of Emperor Claudius. And so the argument being, why would Luke point out that this like random unheard of prophet named Agabus prophesies that there's a famine coming, which is agreed to have been fulfilled like sometime in the early 40s under Emperor Claudius. But he wouldn't point out that like the main character of his gospel's primary prophecy had been fulfilled. Right.
I've seen good arguments that Luke used elements in Josephus, which was dated in the 90s, so that Luke must be written. Luke and Acts are written after the 90s.
Whoa.
But also, do you know what was that verse again on the Luke famine?
Acts 11:27 through 28. And then you have also, I have here this, like it's the 2 Kings 25, 8 through 10, which is about, it's like the earlier 586 prediction of the destruction. I mean, isn't really uncommon even that all the prophets said the Jews are going to suffer some type of calamity because they keep disobeying the Creator, right? I mean,
this is just saying that a prophecy was fulfilled in the time of Claudius. But
the point being, why would it point out?
What does that mean? It's written in the time of
No. What I'm saying is, why would he point out that some random prophet made a prophecy prediction of a famine and that it was fulfilled, but not point out that the main character of his Gospels, the Messiah, had his prophecy fulfilled if he wrote it after 70 AD? You know what I'm saying? Like he would definitely include like, the Messiah predicted the temple was going to be destroyed, and with vivid details, and look, it happened.
Isn't that in Luke though? Because people believe that the author of Luke is the author of Acts. Mm-hmm. And in Luke, I think it has does Jesus predict the temple destruction in Luke?
Well,
I bet it does, and that's just based on Matthew and Mark, which
I'm talking about the
also
fulfillment, though, right? Like, if it was written afterwards, don't you think they would say, look, the Messiah, his prophecy was fulfilled. He told you that this was going to happen to the temple, blah, blah, blah. They would just say, like, look, they would include a fulfillment of prophecy.
No, then that would give away that it's written. That would undermine their argument that Jesus made a prophecy if they say it's already fulfilled. They're not admitting that it was written in 70 AD. The Gospels actually are anonymous and written in an unknown place, unknown time. They apply no skepticism, no citing of any sources.
Yeah.
And they weren't named, given authored names until many decades later. So they didn't apply any skepticism at all to these stories. There's omniscient narration where it couldn't have come from any eyewitness. It's all based on Mark and symbolic allegory. That's my stance. Fake prophecy fulfillment. Even Mark 1:1, it's like, as the prophet Isaiah said, the whole thing is, and then so the scriptures could be fulfilled. This happened. And every aspect of the Jesus story is derived from prophecy fulfillment. And what's the easier way to explain a story of all these fulfilled prophecies? Somebody knew the prophecies and used all the source material and quote mined it and then lifted it and put it into a story, or some magical person really came and did all these things. Nobody outside of the Bible saw it or wrote it down until almost 100 years later. And one requires magic, one doesn't. So what's this? I mean, is there no other way that we could have a story about all these prophecies being fulfilled than a magic superhero came and did all of them? Obviously,
of course.
There's an easy explanation for the prophecies fulfilled.
Of course, right? Like I don't claim that you can prove it or anything. I'm just saying that you definitely can't prove that they were written even in the mainstream agreed upon dates. And there are like very respected atheist scholars that will tell you, those that built their career on vehemently opposing and denying the existence of anything miraculous or supernatural. I forgot that guy's name. That then
it's got to be the minority though that thinks it's the majority opinion that the Gospels are.
It's also the majority opinion that he existed, right? So I technically that's called an appeal to a consensus or majority. When it comes to history, it's tough because that's, like I was saying earlier, it's totally different, right? Like with science, we can go do an
said it because you just said the opposite. You said some atheists date it before, I just said actually that's not true. Definitely
it's a minority.
Atheist biblical scholars are going to say it's after the temple's destruction.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out, like you would agree, obviously, that majority of scholars, even atheists, would say that he exists. And honestly, I think to make the argument he doesn't,
not
you have to go in the carrier
of the Gospels, but just some charismatic preacher that was crucified.
And they would agree that
they'll agree to.
Yeah, that he was crucified, and a couple other things at least happened that are described in the New Testament. Obviously, none of them would stamp the miraculous things, but like to kind of deny the historicity, it does require explanations for certain things, which Carrier provides them. Like I tip my hat to Carrier in the sense that he does not like ignore the implicate or ramifications of claiming he didn't exist. Like he provides an alternative narrative, right? Which is like, for example, that Paul believed in a celestial fulfillment of the Messiah and stuff like that. And like I respect that.
Like every other religion with a mythical angel-like character.
Basically, his argument is like, we can't definitively prove that he existed. I can give you a reasonably logical alternative possibility of what the writings could have been like motivated by, and therefore I can say that I am more confident that he didn't exist, but he could have, right? Like that's his argument, and it's an intellectually honest position, at least. Like he definitely never claims he knows he didn't exist.
This is what he says. This is why it's a strong argument, because we know at that time in antiquity there were Jews that were searching the scriptures, looking for hidden mysteries that could be revealed by the right interpretations, the right exegesis. And they were searching for mysteries about their Messiah and the end times and how they're going to be redeemed. And it's easy to see how Jesus, the suffering Messiah, Son of Man figure, can be read out of the scriptures. Just a couple of related themed passages like in Daniel, Isaiah, Zechariah, and you can see like the whole core foundation of the Jesus narrative. And when you have Paul and all these early epistles saying, who never knew Jesus, saying he sees him in the scriptures, that's just what the Gospels did. They expanded on this euhemerization of Jesus and said, okay, what else can we find about this mythical savior figure? in the scriptures. Let me write this allegorical literary construct of a savior fulfilling all these prophecies.
Yeah, I get it. Like I said, and like I would like to read Carrier's book, although I think he does a pretty, like you can really understand his position for the most part, even listening to his debates or him kind of lay it out. You get the general
debate. Like an hour of him talking, and the book is like over
Sure.
20 hours. It's so much more in depth.
Yeah, of
And,
course.
like every few minutes you're just hearing like, okay, there's another, nail in the coffin. Like there's so many things. When you actually look into the details of it, the evidence is so bad that he existed, and there's tons of evidence that points to that he started as a mythological figure.
No, I get that. Yeah, that's why I told you that I would be open to having a discussion specifically about it, but I would want to like read his book and maybe even a couple of other books that you bring up. I haven't read them. Like I did look into this. I watched a bunch of debates back in the day. I read a couple books that were atheists basically talking about how they reluctantly acknowledge they exist. He just wasn't miraculous. And because that's what I just assumed, and I was just gonna go.
That's what everybody assumes.
Well, I assumed he didn't exist at first, actually, right? That's what I thought at first. I thought he didn't exist. I watched Zeitgeist and stuff like that. I'm like,
yeah, me too. Zeitgeist is bad. Carrier hates Zeitgeist and thinks it's a lot of disinfo.
It's awful misinformation.
Think of this biblical scholarship consensus, though, that nobody actually wants to get into the details. They just want to go, oh, well, you're fringe, and that's a conspiracy. And the consensus of all the real scholars, this consensus was started by biblical studies people, which was always been dominated by Christians.
Well, historians
they have statement of faiths. What?
Well, they're predominantly atheists now, though, right? Like historians.
No, not predominantly. I'd say it's minority atheists.
Historians?
Even like the top so-called atheist biblical scholar, Bart Ehrman, he still got all of his formal education at Christian universities, being trained to be an apologist. He was still a Christian Zionist until his adult years, his like 20s and 30s.
Yeah, but that would be a pretty strong hostile witness, right? Meaning that like, he has all the motivation in the world to completely throw the whole thing under the bus, right? To be like,
no, he doesn't, because he's made a whole career as a best-selling author, telling you who the real Jesus was.
Okay.
Which was what he learned, which he first learned from the consensus of all his Christian teachers at his Christian schools, and then he started to not be a believer anymore and start to expose forgeries and all these problems in the Bible. But he's made such a career of talking about the historical Jesus that it's like he's heavily invested in it.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, I guess in Carrier, obviously, being like one of the few that really state that he just didn't exist at all, also has like a kind of a career that he can build off it. And I'm not actually talking bad about Carrier. I like him. Like, to me, the Carrier guy seems like an honest guy. He seems pretty cordial in debate. He's very well informed on it. I have no beef with the guy. I don't agree with him right now, but I haven't read his book. You see, like, I feel like it's more wise of me to say I should read his book to be able to fully formulate it.
Yes, very, very wise. I wish more people had that type of wisdom.
It's important, yeah. Like to it would be really easy for me to just like appeal to consensus the whole time. Be like, well, all the scholars say he existed.
Wikipedia says so. Yeah. That's true.
And I've learned through a lot of rabbit holes, bro, that not only is consensus not typically or just like hands down true, it's typically not true. So, like, I don't have like that isn't a real hiccup for me, even though it benefits my side. Although I will say history is a little different. Like with science, I can go do a test, I can do an experiment, I can test it myself. History, you can't do that. History as an overarching, like just the subject in general, is like way different. It's like majority of stuff has been destroyed. Victor is the author. Tons of temples and books and documents have been destroyed, rewritten and mistranslated. Like, it's a mess. Like the reason I believe in it, bro, the strongest reasons I believe in it is not like studying the historicity of physical documents. It's because I had crazy spiritual experiences, like direct spiritual experiences, right? So I do think, though, truth doesn't fear investigation. I feel it to be true. Like I like as close to feeling like I know it as possible. And so I don't fear any of this. That's why I wanted to give you a platform. I want to hear the strongest arguments. I want to house the conversations. I think people that are like, shut him down or like get mad at you, like most of the Christians that interact with you, bro, are just a joke. They're a lot like how people get triggered with me with like cosmology and the earth and stuff, they'll just like spiral into ad homs and divert, or they won't know like even a fraction of, as much about their own belief than you do. Like I experienced that a lot. And so I'm like pulling for you in this weird like little paradox in these interactions, you know? Yeah. Cause I'm like, these people, even if I like the conclusion I am on their side, like I disagree with like the way that they go about it. So yeah, so that's why I think it's cool.
Run, just to let you know, I got to run in 2 minutes. I'm booked on another show. I got to go.
Oh, you're cool. You're cool. You want to just tell everyone where to find you and then wrap it up, and we'll maybe kick it sometime in the future or something.
On Twitter, more_news. I'm also streaming on Rumble and Odyssey and nomorenews.org, KNOW, like knowledge. And I appreciate you for having me on. It was a really good talk. I enjoyed the talk, all the topics we covered. Good discussion, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for jumping on, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, much love.
Bye.
Later. All right, I'm going to, for you guys, I'm going to play my song real fast. I have to use the bathroom so bad. I don't know if you guys can tell. I'm like twisting back and forth. I've had to pee so bad for like 30 minutes. I'm going to play my song real quick, and then I'll come back.
Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they sipping pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature that mean extorted it. They forging it. If news anchors informant to informing them, there's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we courting ships, important gifts. Of course it is, what extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?
All right, now let me change this. Sorry, I don't know if you guys could tell. I like was struggling to even focus at the end there. I had to use the bathroom so bad. Like, that was pretty crazy. All right, where are we at here? What's going on? All right, sorry, we'll get it a little better picture here. All right. Good enough. what's up? So I kind of knew that would happen. Donation overlay. Maybe it was obviously supposed to happen that way. I think it was a good conversation. It ended up just being on YouTube the whole time. I think it was pretty much YouTube friendly. It should be fine. Yeah, one of the major things I wanted to do was show people that you can have conversations about these subjects, disagreeing, and still be like respectful. And I know people were getting triggered, and I'm like, whoa, why are you like? I don't know why, but like I said in the stream, I respect him, and I respect he's done a lot of diligent research and things. He's exposed a lot of things that need to be exposed, and I'm all for it. So really, we kind of got into like not Zionism as much, but that's fine. Yeah, so I kind of kept things really neutral and would throw some things out and just be like, I see what you're saying, because I don't want to like debate a subject that important without it being like very moderated and like specifically designed, if you will, like what's the word, but it needs to be like very organized. I would have like very specific notes and arguments and slides and stuff like that. And that's why I was telling him like I'd be open to like maybe some type of future debate or something about it. But like each of those subjects, you can't breeze through them. Like say like with the Josephus conversation, like, well, that conversation right there can take 30 minutes. Just covering points rapid fire. Same with like the early dating of the Gospels. All like, or the idea of the celestial interpretation of Jesus. Well, it's like, okay, now you got to get into all the details of the Gospels and do certain verses actually align with that. A lot of them, I would say they don't. They point blank talk about a physical person that died, and they say, oh, well, they believed in a physical version of heaven. So there's like a physical celestial Messiah, but he physically dies and physically resurrects and has a physical crucifixion, but it's really in heaven, not on the earth, just celestial and stuff like that. And Carrier would say like in space, and right then that's going to get into like, okay, no, that first of all, there is no outer space even in reality, but much less in like the Hebrew cosmology. That's not what it is. I don't know what that means. And he's just kind of referring to heaven. I heard him say the word space, and you get into the implications of all of those things. So it's a very deep conversation. And what I will tell you, structured, there you go. Yeah, a very structured and well-moderated debate. And I'm happy to do it with him. I'm actually happy to do it with someone like Carrier, but I would need to like really thoroughly do my research. I need to actually fully read his book, read the other books, really go investigate it all for myself. Truth is not fear investigation, and that's what I want people to know, right? Like, if you think that the scriptures are true, you should never shy away from people questioning them, challenging them. The Creator doesn't want people blindly believing things without evidence or just believing them because other men said it or what? It says diligently seek all things out, hold steadfast to that which is true, right? Like you're supposed to prove things. So yeah. And like I said, a lot of that, I still could have debated a lot of that and pushed back on a lot of it. I think that I didn't want it to get like real intense and interruptive. And so I think it went fine. I think he let me say a good amount of things. I let him say a good amount of things. And that's what I wanted it to be like. Really, I was hoping that we'd have a portion of it talking about kind of what's going on. But it's all good. I mean, we kind of covered it in the first stream. And I guess technically I could switch over and end it covering it all, but I don't really want to do that. We'll just kind of keep this as a bit of a closing, and then we'll wrap up because the show was just having him on. And I'll do a like, did Jesus exist? And we'll go over all of this at some point. We'll have a whole PowerPoint. It's a very deep conversation. I would say like he certainly exists. Yeshua existed historically. In that region was crucified. Tomb was empty. People claim that they saw him. I would say that those are like all historically valid. And what normally happens, I think, is there's a bit of a double standard applied to the Messiah, right? Because like, it's like, oh, but he's supposedly the Son of God. Shouldn't there be way more for him? It's like the emperor at the time of Yeshua was Tiberius. Guess how many different authors wrote about Tiberius? The Emperor of Rome. An Emperor of Rome. Guess how many different sources we have from different authors talking about the Emperor of Rome existing? 10. We have 10. There are argued to be over 40 for Yeshua. A random rebel. That's what Rome considered them. That's what many of the Jews considered him, right? So we're talking about the Emperor of Rome only had 10. So people were like, oh, but no, there should be more. And you could go through all of those and be like, wow, but he's just taking that from someone else that he heard say it. Yeah, because that's how historians work. And that's how historians wrote things down. And you can never divine the thoughts of them, like know what they did or didn't research. And so I guess what I'm saying is when it comes to the historicity of this one figure, it's held to like a way higher standard. And people are like, well, don't you think it should be because he's the claimed Messiah? Like, no, I don't. I think that we have a accepted historical standard determining what happened in the past or who existed in the past. It should be evenly applied to everything in history because, like, even as Carrier would tell you, 99.999% of things were destroyed. And whether or not it was by the Christians or other groups, doesn't matter. They were destroyed. And it's just the fake Christians because that's what Rome is. That's what the Catholic Church is. Right, but my point is, they're like, but don't you think it should be held to a higher standard? Like, no, you're conflating the claims of miracles and then the existent thing, right? Like, those are two separate things. The claims of miracles should be held to a higher standard, sure. They're claims of miracles, seemingly that defy physics. I get it. That's insane. I get that. But, like, showing a double standard to the history is showing like an intellectual bias, a spiritual bias, whatever. And that's why I did bring up the early dating of gospel, the late dating of the gospels, just to make the point that the primary argument across the board for why we know the gospels had to have been written, because you always hear this from people that don't even know much about the subject, and that's not Adam, obviously. He is very informed on the subject. You'll hear them just all throughout. It wasn't even written until 40 years after Jesus died. The first Gospels, after Jesus allegedly died, right? Like, everyone knows to say that. Actually, that's not like a definitive fact at all. The primary argument of all the scholars and why they say that is because, well, Yeshua, Jesus, prophesied the destruction of the temple with specificity, exactly how it would happen, or like details as to how it would happen, and then it happened. And so they're like, okay, well, the Gospels couldn't have been written before the destruction of the temple because that would mean that he was prophetic. And we know that there's no way someone can actually be prophetic. There's no way this guy actually prophesied what was going to happen to the temple with that specificity. So they must have filled it in after the fact, right? Post-filled the prophecy. So that's like an anti-supernaturalistic bias. And that's their primary argument. Now, there are quite a few arguments, but I'm very particular about how I debate. Like, when I debate, like actually debate, I want to have my stuff laid out, like very coherent arguments, enough time for each argument. Like, that's, I don't just willy-nilly throw around debates. That kind of turned into like a bit of that, which is not really what I wanted to do, but it's fine. I told him, like, nothing's off limit, and I could tell that's what he would want to talk about, and it's fine. Thumbnail was weird for an intellectual religious discussion. I literally just explained why, though. But you, of course, are the one that is always just super negative. So the intention was not necessarily to talk about that. That's just what happened. I think I messed up in the sense that I brought it up at the very beginning. And I brought it up behind the scenes, and I kind of to be like, yeah, we disagree on this. Well, let's talk about kind of what we do agree on at first, and then I brought it up at the beginning of the show, and I can tell he's like, oh, well, you're going to bring it up in the beginning, then let's like discuss it. So I kind of messed up on that, but great convo with it. Thank you. And I meant everything I said in the stream, by the way. I meant that I side more with people like him and him specifically than people that just like are super arrogant and dogmatic, and they've memorized certain doctrines, religious doctrines that they've heard, and they tell everyone they're going to burn in hell, right? Like the people that run around saying that I'm going to burn in hell because I don't believe in the Trinity that they believe in. I don't believe that Jesus is the Father and co-equal. And
I'm gonna burn in hell and super vicious and hateful and evil. Like, who are you, another man, to tell me what is going to happen to me after I die? Right? Like, think about the amount of hubris needed to say that you knew what it would be based on like a certain interpretation I have. Like, I wouldn't say that about anyone. I wouldn't say anyone's going to do anything. Like, I'm not the creator. It's like insane. There is no hell. Okay, that wasn't my point. Was that guy talk to a baller? I don't think he really talks about that publicly, but I would assume. So yeah, and that's not what this show was about. Actually, I didn't even mean for it to be about that, but I feel like that's what the creator wanted to be. Wanted to be like that. I feel like that's a bit of a cliffhanger. We should have more of a like. I should like actually really prepare for it, and I kind of intended to. It just had different things going on, and it's just I realized it's such a rabbit hole to fully get it all prepared. I want to debate it for real. So anyway, we'll move on. Let me go read. I agree, Jeff. We must stay humble as we search the truth out. Yeah. All right, let me check the donations. Let me check y'all's donations, bro. Yeah, there's like obviously there's major portions of it too that are important when it comes to the context of Zionism. I wonder if I can, let me try this. Let me, all right, bear with me. I'm going to go off camera for just a second and just see if this works. So if I go like this, am I still on here? What's going on? Oh yeah. Okay, now let me come over. Let me see. Boom. There we go. All right, I think that's our like real camera. And then we can come over here, maybe like this. All right, cool. And obviously, that doesn't really matter. All right. Let me read the donations. Yo, it's thundering outside. Justin Johnson, thank you for the $20. And Raxo Hearn, great stream tonight, very enlightening discussion, and Adam was amazing. Thank you for the $10 and the kind words. Like I think, you know what I think so crazy is like this is the same reason that like I'm Jaren's my boy. I maybe don't have a popular opinion on this amongst believers. I don't know. But I don't think that we're supposed to be. I think when people are trying to find the truth and that's what they're supposed to do. Like we talked about how like if something doesn't make sense to you and like you don't believe it, you're not supposed to pretend to or make yourself or pretend it makes sense or believe in something you think is immoral. If you think something's immoral or evil, you're not supposed to convince yourself that you have to think it's not immoral. Like the creator doesn't want you to do that. That doesn't make any sense. That's not how he made us. He wants us to know truth, and truth is pure and good, and wants us to find the truth and love it and, believe it and hold to it and do what's right. Like that's what. So if someone's like in the process of thinking that parts of the scripture are messed up or they don't understand it, doesn't make sense to them, like they're not supposed to pretend it does. That's way worse. I will tell you, my position is very, very strongly that the scriptures absolutely are true. They have been messed with, but that the creator in the scriptures is true. the Messiah was real, is true. And it's the number one most attacked thing in the world, so much so that they've created 3 primary Abrahamic religions that have twisted the vast majority of it. So, you tell me. No, it says that the path is narrow, but you didn't know that there's like 2 billion Christians that all got it right because they said like what? All right. So I think that's the only donations. So let me think about what's going on here. Yeah, like I said, like I don't want to like break down all the arguments now, right? Like I don't even know if it was too discombobulated to follow it, but I think what was happening, we were having a conversation where both of us know the context of certain references and details and stuff like that, and people that aren't really familiar with the conversation are not going to. That's why I didn't necessarily want to do it, but I would want a really structured debate because I know the audience isn't particularly familiar with things. Maybe Josephus to an extent, but the rest of it, probably not. People really aren't even probably familiar with that. And so they should know. Like, I'll just tell you, this is Josephus has a portion that refers to Jesus, and it's embellished. It's agreed upon that it's pseudepigraphical, meaning like either multiple authors, not the author that it's claimed to be, etc. And it's that the small portion of Josephus' work, which Josephus is one of the most revered historians ever, Jewish guy, was captured by the Romans, employed basically as a translator, a historian, a recorder, known to be one of the most thorough historians ever, right? Certainly of his time. And what he would do is he was super critical of any type of spiritual or metaphysical claim, super critical of anything like that. Any historical claims, he would verify things. And there's a verse that was, allegedly attributed to him, a portion of his writing that says that Jesus existed, and if you can consider him a man and stuff like that. And was not really his writing. I mean, he was Jewish. So like if he's talking about how this guy was a god, like then that would imply he converted, right? Like he was a Christian, but he was Jewish. He wasn't a Christian. So it's that easy to prove that portion was added, but if you actually look at the writing structure, they added he's just talking about the guy named Jesus or Yeshua. He's talking about the guy named Yehoshua, right? And then they added a bit to it. And so it's like the man named Jesus, if you can call him a man, that's what they put there. And they added a few other things to embellish it, to make it more like the Christian Messiah that they believed in, which is deceptive. And it gives it such a bad name, and it's like crazy. But if you remove those portions that are clearly embellished, you'll see that it flows much smoother, and it's clearly his writing style. And then a little bit later, he references it by saying James, the brother of Jesus, like implying that the reader would already know who Jesus is because he had just previously explained it. That is an extra biblical account that is considered one of the most thorough. I mean, Josephus was known to be very thorough. Now, I'll do a whole show on the historicity of Yeshua because it's like every bit of it has so much information, and there's no way you can just memorize all of it off the top of your head. You're going to have notes. I guarantee you, I've watched even these like PhD historians that have studied it for years and written entire books about it and had like 30 debates. They are referencing notes because you're talking about what historian did what at different times. I think if I studied it, I'd be able to remember quite a bit of it off the top of my head, but I'd have to really dive in and study it. And so anyway, I will and make a show called Did Jesus Exist? I'll do a PowerPoint. We'll cover it probably like 3 hours, and we'll get into a lot of it. And you can make up your decision for yourself. I'll help you to narrow down your research, but yeah. And I plan on reading Carrier's book. I think he has one book about basically the assumed impossibility of the resurrection, or I think it's specifically about the historicity of the resurrection, and then another one about the historicity of Jesus himself. And he says in his own words that he's like, I think there's a 1 in 3 chance that he really existed. He just thinks that the alternative possibility isn't discussed enough, which is that it could be a celestial Jesus that Paul was believing in, because almost everyone will agree that Paul was like a reliable historical author. So anyway, I guess this is my idea here, right? Truth is not fear investigation. The deeper you get into something, if the scriptures are true, if the Messiah is real, if the Creator is real, like, you're just going to get closer and closer to proving it right, proving him right, vindicating him against any attacks, right? And that's why I encourage them. I welcome them. I think that we're supposed to do that. I think that I don't do this for people that aren't interested in it, right? Or aren't going to do it. The most efficient way, the thing you're supposed to do, the thing that you should do right now, is go pray sincerely and ask for a sign. Oh, I have prayed before. People say that a lot, and I start asking them questions, and I don't want to say that people are lying. Like, they may have thought they said a prayer, but they weren't like really sincere. I'm asking, like, were you really sincere and like humble and like just vulnerable? And like, no, like, I think if you sincerely talk to the Creator and seek out the truth and ask for signs and answers and for the truth regarding this, that you will get them. And I did, and it was crazy, and it was a lot of them, and I had a bias against it. And I'd say the Creator loves you, and like, you'd be amazed. You'd be amazed. So I encourage people to do that, to pray and have personal experiences, personal relationships, seek the truth. And then, I think you should study into these things. I looked into what I'm not gonna lie, I understand if you feel like you need to do it intellectually at first, like even with the historicity, that's what I did. Like, but it's been like 6 years or something, 7 years. I looked into the historicity of Jesus after watching Zeitgeist, and I found out Zeitgeist is a complete joke. I researched it, and like, it was complete misinformation. I'm like, why are they lying to us? Why are they lying about how Jesus didn't really exist? Why are they lying about all the past history? Right? None of that's real. And so then I started researching the historicity after I had a spiritual experience. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. He absolutely existed. And so I took notes back then. I remember I used to print a bunch of things off, and I would highlight them, and I was isolated in my house, like up on 5 acres. I didn't really talk to anyone, and I studied all these different things, ancient religions, and I studied like the history of Jesus. I started figuring out different religions and their origins and like what the scriptures actually say, and started reading them for myself, and I would pray and fast and stuff. And so that's been a long time. So off the top of my head, I don't remember a lot of stuff. I've tried to look over a couple of things the last couple of days, knowing he's coming on, but it's like, it's an insane amount of information when you introduce like really big books that people wrote claiming he didn't exist. So I don't have time to read 4 books. Okay, so that's what I'll say about that. Is like, I will look into making like a show about it. I think that we're good. All right, so I think that all right. That's really pretty much it on that whole subject. That's basically all that we covered. Obviously, we're gonna just finish it off on YouTube, but the idea was to cover that, like, obviously the plague of Zionism has taken over the whole world. I think that they're gonna have they're gonna take over the whole world. That's what it is. I'm not gonna just now go off YouTube to end the stream and explain it. We kind of covered it in the first stream, but it's pretty simple. We watched the video. You can watch it. We really discussed it, and I think the important part here that I don't think I really have ever gotten a truly satisfactory answer to wrap this up is like, if it's a trick that they wrote, why did they lie about it and twist it? And it's like, it doesn't really add up to me. Like, both sides have lied about it immensely, tremendously, removed books, mistranslated on purpose, removed the creator's name, created entire doctrines, lied about all of it, mistranslated the Babylonian Talmud, so from the Jewish side, the Judaism side, and then the Catholic Church side, and then turning into the Jesuits in 1540, that side. What did they do? They pushed through what we covered last time, right? You have the priest, Manuel Lancuza, right? A Jesuit priest, may have butchered his name, and then he has a Jewish pseudonym, Hosavat bin Ezra or something like that. And he writes this book about the coming Messiah, or really he's like, he writes this book about the coming Messiah, and then this other guy translates it into English. from Spanish, and then that's kind of progresses into Darby and to dispensationalism, which is the idea that God has different eras and he rules differently and his grace is different and everything changes and there's a new covenant and the old covenant and all this stuff. And then you fast forward into the 1909 Scofield Bible, we get the physical state of Israel being predicted and prophesied, when what the scriptures actually say is that they are kicked out of their land, they'll never get it back. And then they are able to push this whole lie of Zionism that can be tracked back to Jesuits, and just like the state of Israel being founded by the Rothschilds can be tracked back to Jesuits, because the Rothschilds work for the Jesuits. They're the banking arm of the Jesuits. And it's very interesting to track it all back. And I guess all I'm saying is they've lied about this. They've lied about the scriptures, what's really in it, what it really says in the original languages, more than anything else in the world, on both sides, quote unquote Christian and quote unquote Judaism. And then you have quote unquote Islam, and they're like, oh, well, that was all corrupted. Ours is the only one that counts. Notice there's a theme in all of these Abrahamic religions of modern times that are like, the original, what it actually says originally is not what is available to people on the surface. It's not what people claim it says. It's not what people are encouraged to find. It's subverted. It's lied about. It's hidden. It's mistranslated. These are just facts. Like, regardless of what you think about them, they are the most attacked thing in the history of mankind. It's not even close. And so, yeah, anyway, there you go. This is way too big of a subject to cover right now. I do want to start integrating it into my show a bit more, but I think it's important, certainly, to start to figure out, understand these things with what's going on right now. So it turns out the show ended up being YouTube friendly. At least I hope so. I think it was. But go look at No More News. If you want to find out more details kind of about the Zionist thing, if you don't know much about it, I think it's very interesting. He looks at what a bunch of rabbis will tell you and what some of the prophecies say. And it's a very interesting paradigm. And to kind of understand world events, I think it's very important contextually to understand what certain people believe. And there's that. So I may end up changing the name of the stream to like just like being like having Adam Green on, or like something more about like what we talked about, because it wasn't really about Zionism per se. It really wasn't, but we'll see. It's all good. All right. I'm going to get out of here. Let me check everything else. I forgot we have Rockfin as well. Melodome, excellent conversation. Thank you so much for the $5 tip. Twilight Dome, what's it? I hope you choose to pray and open the Bible again. This time, ask for understanding in regards to who Jesus is. Many blessings to you and your wife and children. Thank you for the $20 tip and for the kind words. I did that, and that's why I found out that he says the Father is greater than I. And then a bunch of people try to tell me I'm going to burn in hell, and I need to believe them and what a bunch of early church fathers and priests said, because they think it's different. But he said the Father is greater than I. So, that I used to believe in the whole Trinity narrative. I used to believe in the whole co-equal, co-eternal doctrine narrative. I used to believe that he was God in the flesh. I used to believe that he was synonymous with the Father, 3 persons in one. I used to believe all of that. Even made a stream about how I thought it was true. Then I prayed about this because it was being brought up to me by other people. I was actually very arrogant about it. And actually, Blaze will tell you that she was very sad when I came to her house. It was actually here in Florida. And I did the stream on her back porch talking about how I knew the Trinity was real. And I read John 1:1 very arrogantly on the stream, like it was that simple. And I ended up finding out I was wrong. I prayed, I researched more, I did more diligent research. I found out that that's not true. And when you debate people that believe in it, they'll say the same verses. You'll point out that well, look, this is what it actually says in the Greek. This is what it actually says in the Hebrew. Wait, you left off the end of the verse. Look what it says there. Look what it's actually saying. And they never concede. They never say, oh, fair enough, I'm going to remove that verse from my claimed Trinity supporting document or arguments. They just keep saying it, just like globe earthers do. You refute it, and then instead of like being like, oh, wow, and conceding, they'll just come back the next time and bring that same verse up out of context, mistranslated, improperly defining the word God, loosely throwing it around everywhere, even though that isn't how it works in the original languages with what the words they're using is. they'll just keep saying them. So what I found out was, just like with the globe and the heliocentric model, a lot of people that claim to believe in the Trinity or know it's real, whatever, they just repeated it for many, many years. They believe a specific doctrine and they can't let go of it. And so I'm still open to being wrong. But I think it very clearly says, the Messiah says, like, the Father's greater than I. I think he helped create everything. I think it's incredible what he did. I think he's our mediator. I think he's our high priest. I don't believe that he says that he's equal to the Father. He says the opposite. And I think that's a very important distinction. I think you actually undermine the Messiah when you say that he was here 100% God and 100% human, when what it says is he emptied himself out completely and came here as a servant. He could have failed. He was tempted by evil. He could have messed up, and then he overcame it. When you say he was God while he was here, you're basically like undermining what he did to overcome the temptations and not fail. And so, anyway, that's a long response to the super chat. I think you're coming from a sincere place. That's my position. My position is not just like randomly I decided to think what I think. I think that it's not really that there's no truth into the idea of like the nuances of the Godhead and the similarities of the names and what some of them mean and how there's similarity to them, and it's a father and a son, right? But the co-equal Trinity doctrine is wrong, according to the Messiah himself. Adam and Witsit having a discussion has been a personal wish of mine, and it hasn't disappointed. Adam, I know you think FE is cringe and designed to distract and discredit real truths. Please put your top 3 globe proofs and allow Austin to retort. Oh, yeah. There's no way we could have got the questions, but that probably wouldn't even have been a good idea in this first conversation. But thank you for the $5 tip. Justin Johnson donated 20 on Ko-fi. Forget to put who from, LOL. Much love, Austin. Thank you for being you. Thank you for the very generous $50 tip on Rockfin, Justin. Did I not read it? Yeah. It said it was from you, Justin Johnson. It just didn't. It doesn't have a message on it though. But thank you for the 20 on Ko-fi as well, Justin. Much love, brother. Bailey Morris, Austin. You ever plan on getting your music on Spotify? I don't know. Maybe I would re-record that song with a different mic and better production and stuff like that if I was going to do that. Or any of my other songs probably wouldn't be what I currently have out. I'd have to redo them. Thank you for the tip. John Keeley, thank you for the $10 tip on Rockfin. All right, let me double check. Cultivate Clarity, good stream, brother. Thanks for your efforts. Spotify. Thank you. I don't know, maybe. I would re-record. Thank you for the $10 on Rumble, brother. Much love. Thanks for the kind words as well. Death6102, thank you for the $5. We are going to brute force you onto InfoWars. Yeah, that would be awesome. That's hilarious you brought that up. By the way, everyone should go check out my X. And we ratioed InfoWars on their own post. They said, who would you guys want to see Harrison like bring on and debate? And then everyone said, Witsit gets it in the chat. They were like, tag them in the replies, and everyone was like tagging me. So if you're on X, you can go to my profile and look at my most recent tweets to find it, and go just at WitsitGetsIt. And then what I was doing was going and harding every single one that said my name. So we're ratioing them. He's saying we're going to brute force it. Maybe so. Thank you for the tip, man. Because everyone's like, oh, they were afraid to talk about Zionism. They're afraid to talk about Zionism. No, they're not. They did. But you know what they are afraid to talk about? Literally. You know what they literally were told they are not allowed to talk about? You know what they were literally brought around and said, no more talking about this. You're not allowed to talk about this. This is the forbidden topic. It wasn't Zionism. They didn't have a meeting about Zionism. So that's interesting. All right. I think we're good. You clearly don't get the co-equal from the Bible. That's not a debate. That doesn't negate the fact that the Bible speaks of three in the Godhead, hence Trinity. I very specifically have made it very clear. I don't believe in the Trinity, and that is the modern popularized belief of the Trinity, which is that Jesus is God and is equal to the Father, and there's the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit that are all equal, 3 persons in one. Okay, it doesn't say that. It says that we are saved by the Father through the Son. That's a big, important distinction to make. It's very important, right? It says we're saved by the Father through the Son. And he says, the Father's greater than I. I have no authority other than what was given to me by the Father. Only the Father knows the final day and hour, not the angels and not even the Son. is very important, and that's what I've clearly been speaking out against the entire time. Yeah, no, I don't want to get into that debate right now, dude. I just encourage, like, what's happened, all the truthers I know that are super diligent and honest and humble and they research it, some of like some of my best friends, right? Like, they first heard me talk about it, they got triggered kind of, and they thought I was wrong for sure, or they'd be like, yeah, I'll look into it, I don't know. They thought that I was wrong for sure, and I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. I used to think the same thing. Just pray about it, sincerely pray about it. Like, do the same thing that the person sent me a tip telling me to do. Sincerely pray about it, diligently research it, read the verses that are supposedly for the Trinity. Like, for example, go watch Kingdom in Context, right? And them talk about it, really break down the verses, be honest about it, be diligent about it, look what the original languages say, realize that you're using the word God improperly, irresponsibly. If you just think it says, oh, God here, it says God there, it's not how it works. And what always happens is they end up coming back and be like, oh my gosh, like I was shown that my belief was wrong through the scriptures. So, I don't know. I mean, it's whatever. I don't have a problem with someone believing in anything, though, really, right? Like, what I have a problem with is people saying, oh, you don't believe exactly what I think, you're going to burn in hell. Like, when people say, like, oh, well, you can't truly understand the Trinity. It's incomprehensible. It's beyond our ability to understand it. You can't understand it. But if you don't understand it, you're going to burn in hell. It's like, you're making a great point, man. Yeah. Like, whatever, bro. Jesus is the Father's elect one. Yeah. He was the chosen one. He said, I have no authority other than what was given to me by the Father. Oh, but he was talking about himself. He said, oh, I sat at the right hand of the Father. Oh, but he was talking about himself. He said, no one knows the final day nor the final hour, not even the Father, only the Son. So not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Oh, well, no, that's not what I meant. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't actually mean that. See, he said the Father is greater than I. Oh, but what he actually meant was that they were equal. You know, it's like, whatever, bro. He said, why haven't you forsaken me to himself? He's sitting at the right hand of himself. He gave himself authority. He can only get authority from himself. He has no authority other than that given to him by himself. And that's where the people use the cop out. Well, we just can't understand it. It's like, or you are believing what men told you's in there and just like lazily reading certain English translations and not going to the original languages and see what it really says. The way I know that is because I used to believe it. I used to believe it. Not only did I used to believe it, I did a stream and brought up a bunch of the verses that I thought proved it with like a cursory overlook. Like John 1:1, for example. You fills me. All right. Because he took on the form of a servant. Well, actually, it says that the Father told him to do that. That's what it says. It says that the Father told him. He did that on behalf of what the Father told him to do. And as a humble servant, he emptied himself out. He emptied himself out as a humble servant on behalf of the Father, for the glory of the Father. Because the Father sent him. The Father sent him and told him to do it. That's what it says. I and my Father are one. Watch, this is a perfect example, right? I and my Father are one. The person says in the chat, right? Okay. One, go look at the original word and what it means. It means I and my Father are one in purpose. Just like whenever you get married, you and your wife become one. You don't literally become one. You also aren't all of a sudden equals with equal authority. Who has the authority in the house? The father, the husband is the head of the household, right? But you become one in purpose. Become one in purpose. But you aren't literally one, and you aren't all of a sudden the man doesn't have authority. No, it says that the husband has authority of the household. It literally means one in purpose. It means one in purpose. Now, this is the point I'm making. That is a fact. You need to go read it, fact check it, actually prove if that's what it says. And what if you don't do that, if you just repeat it again the next time it comes up, you just keep saying it over and over, if you're in here and you hear this but you don't go read it, or this is what the number one thing they do, you just pretend it never happened and you move away from it and bring up something else without being honest or conceding or saying, okay, I can't say that anymore. That's wrong. That's just not actually true. Then you're being dishonest. And so I wouldn't really think that you're representing the creator by being intentionally dishonest, right? That's what I typically experience. I'm sure there are some exceptions, but I find that very weird. I get the same behavior from globe earthers. Say a claim super arrogantly, get directly refuted about their own claim, never concede, just immediately switch over to another point and bring it up, hoping you can eventually find one that they can't respond to, and then all of a sudden you win. I'm saying that's just a dishonest way to do anything. I'm proud of you, Austin. Thanks for seeking truth no matter what others think. Yeah, no problem, brother. Yeah, what's so funny is I get called grifter so much. It's like, dude, the way that I go about everything, like really minimizes the amount of support that I get. People are like, just talk about the earth. Why are you talking about religious things? We're like, oh, you fell for the Jewish religions and the tricks and Jewish mysticism. And it's like, or then there's like the believers, and then they're like, oh, but you don't believe in these specific doctrines that I believe in. You're actually going to hell. You're a heretic. You're the Antichrist. And I have all these believers calling me the Antichrist because I researched their Trinity doctrine and found out it's not true. That makes me an Antichrist. It would obviously be easier for me to just say like the vague understanding of Christianity. Like if I was actually a grifter, that's what you would do. I don't do that, right? Like I say things that I find to be true or have discovered to be true regardless of the ramifications of them. And what happens is, like, say this conversation right here. Well, I say like, oh, the scriptures actually have truth in them, right? So then the group that's like, oh, we found out that these are all just tricks from the Abrahamic deception, and they're trying to take over the world with this, and you have Zionism, and it's Christian Zionism, it's all a trick. They made up a myth to try to trick all the other nations into doing it. And I'm like, no, it's got truth to it, but they have lied about that and Christian Zionism stuff. And so all the Christian Zionists, I trigger them, right? Now I've isolated myself from them. All the people that are calling out the Zionists, but calling it out in the form of like that, all Christianity is a myth, it's all religion, it's all the Abrahamic deception. Well, I've isolated myself from them. And then you have like a small portion of quote unquote Christians at that point. Well, then I start bringing up all these other controversial topics and speaking the truth that I've discovered. I isolate myself from the vast majority of them, right? And we can get into it, like whether there's extra books that have been removed, whether some of the books have been even added, whether some extra lines have been added, whether like actual portions of it have been taken out and added, even with the books that you have, the mistranslations, the misinterpretations, all of that. Get into like the names, whatever. Once you start really speaking the truth on all the topics of the scriptures, you're like basically left with no one. Like it's the smallest little group. And I'm about to branch out to other subjects. I'm going to start losing more people that way. But I'm saying that to say it's okay. I don't care. That's not why I do it. I just do it to speak the truth. I just think it's so grifting is one of the biggest cope. Grifter is the biggest copes. What someone's saying, like that's completely true. Like it's so ridiculous that people say that. I'm such a grifter. I talk about flat Earth. If I was a grifter, I would just talk about how awesome Trump is. I would be like a fake surface level conservative guy, like talking conservative talking points. It'd be so easy to go like super viral and make a podcast just being like a, whatever. You're a truther, Austin. That's what most of you care about. Yeah. Adam, you still got me, brother. Yeah, shout out to Adam. My boy's a legend. No, I'm not complaining, bro. I'm not complaining. I'm just like, I was just kind of explaining. Yes, books have been removed, and the people who refuse to remove them were killed by the church. Exactly. And then they track down all the real believers. It's like, dude, it's the craziest story never told. They tracked down the real believers, killed them. Took out a bunch of books that basically gave you the bigger picture, went against what they wanted to make their new polytheistic pagan religion say, threw them out, found people with them, killed them, found people that refused to throw them out, killed them. Then said, okay, we put them together for you. Here's what they say, I promise. Oh, you disagree? You better convert, or killed them. Okay, we're going to translate all of it for you. What, you want to try to figure it out on your own, or you think that we translated it wrong? Killed them. Okay, now we put it together for you. We're going to tell you what it says. Oh, were you found with what we put together for you? And you're reading it on your own, even though it's not, it's been translated and messed with and, basically trampled on in many ways. And we narrowed it down to what we approve of basically the slave population to have. Wait, are you reading it on your own? Killed them. Right? Like, that's the true story. The believers were being killed the whole time. So they were excommunicated from like the Jewish people, if they were Jewish, because they said that was the Messiah, but the Jews didn't agree. They were basically outcasted. There were a bunch of it wasn't just Jewish people though. Not all the descendants from Israel or of Israel, right? But the point is that that's why I say the truth is rarely popular, and what's popular is rarely true, and they revile you for his name's sake, or you can say the truth's sake. It's basically synonymous, right? Because the Creator is a summation of truth. Rejoice, because they did it to all the prophets before you. They did it to all truth speakers before you. That's how it goes. So, and that's why I throw another wrench into the conversation, because I'm like, oh, but it's not even just the Zionists. Like, look at the Jesuits. So, obviously, what I think you can pretty much rely on is if you really narrow it, like if you keep going and you get to where you're basically all alone, you're closer to the truth usually. Right? Because you're taking in information from all angles and adapting. And so the more information you take in from all angles, then the more toes you step on, the more other beliefs that you cut out, right? The more presuppositions that get contradicted or countered, and what you're left with is something that's kind of all by itself, right? Because it doesn't fit within all these other religions or presuppositions or belief systems or biases. So hopefully that was articulated pretty well. Simple concept, probably everyone kind of knew. Yeah, Catholicism, where it all falls apart. It's satanic. It's demonic. Then Rome had to adapt. It's pretty crazy. But like the thing is, these are such deep conversations. I'll start covering them on occasion. People are gonna get triggered. So many people are coming at me to like stick to cosmology. Like a scholar in the Bible would school you so hard. Austin's like, okay, set up a debate, bro. Like, what are you talking about? Like, imagine having the hubris and audacity to come up to me and tell me that I need to stick to cosmology. I'm not allowed to talk about the scriptures because I'm wrong. Like, okay, well, they tried to tell me that for a job regarding flat earth. I didn't listen to them. I'm definitely not going to listen to you. You're an honest grifter. Do you not know it's a contradiction? That's an oxymoron. Do you know what grifter means? Maybe you guys should look up the definition of words before you throw out derogatory accusations at people. Just read what that means. Define grifter. A person who swindles people out of money through fraud, or someone who plays confidence games. Through fraud or deception. Okay. So, a grifter is a con artist, someone who swindles people out of money through fraud. If there's one type of person who you don't want to trust, it's a grifter, someone who cheats others out of money. Grifters are also known as chiselers, defrauders, gougers, scammers, swindlers, and flim-flam men. Okay, please enlighten me and articulate what fraud am I committing? What am I swindling people out of? Nothing. And like to call me a con man or a grifter, you would have to claim I don't think what I think about the earth, or I don't think what I think about the positions that I say publicly. I think all of them. That's why many of them have even updated, because I've learned new things. Zionism is based. Are you guys just trolling me at this point? All right. got 122, 232. So I think we had about a stack, about 1,000 watching live. I think we're a little under that right now. I didn't really mean to go this long afterwards, so. All right, I'm going to get out of here. Doesn't deceit involve intent? Yeah, certainly lying. Yeah, deceit. But they don't understand these things, brother. It just sounds better to call people names. Okay, so Octavius, then you understand that an honest grifter is a contradictory term. Right? So you can't be an honest grifter. Also, what else I find funny is like, if someone ever sends me $10 on Ko-fi, like, which I've taken like, dude, doing this has not been good for me financially, right? In the grand scheme of things, like, I think it has been bad for me. Like, I could have been making more money as soon as I got the other job I had to turn down. Like, that was years ago. They promised me like rapid progression. It's just all so weird. Who cares? We don't have to talk about it. Grifting, that's what people ridicule the truth through. Yeah, like, this was so funny. The grifters are actually the people, like, those who shall not be named, that go around lying, slandering, twisting, taking screenshots, editing them, lying about what people say, misrepresenting, manipulating, being refuted, then pretending it never happened the next time, twisting what's actually said, twisting sources, like twisting what the person's actual argument is, cutting them up out of context and making videos, claiming they said something that they didn't, misrepresenting them, being corrected, then doubling down on it, lying, and then when proven wrong, just run away and never acknowledge it. Like these people literally do. I've shown receipts and screenshots proving them lying, and then just leave. I'm talking like the big channels that make lots of money. And since they're lying and pushing the narrative and propaganda and scientism that's promoted by the mainstream, they get propped up. They probably have like bots even supporting their channel. They make like insane amounts of money. Just from YouTube memberships alone can make like 6 figures a year after the 30% is taken. And then they have all these other different avenues, right? You have Patreon and all this stuff, and they're lying to do it. They're lying about the other people they're supposed to be opposed to convince people they're winning. They're pumping out intentionally lying, making money, deceiving people with fraud, so that they will pay them money. They literally grift, and you guys have no problem with that. Does Ko-fi take a percentage of donations? So up until yesterday, it took 5%, and then Stripe. Yeah, I have to use my own processor, right? So Stripe takes like 3 to 5%. I found out that you can upgrade to Ko-fi Gold membership or something. I didn't even know about it, and then turn off a certain setting, and it'll drop the 5% to 0%. So now Ko-fi takes 0% platform fee because I'm a Gold member, but it'll still be the Stripe. So it's like 3%. 3 to 5%, but typically 3% Stripe fee, 2.9%, and then depending on what type of payment, it can get up to like 5%, but normally it's right around 3%. So there's a 3% fee on Ko-fi. That's like the cheapest ever. Yeah, pretty much the cheapest fee anywhere. Because Stripe's just a processor. You have PayPal's a processor, and then PayPal can't be trusted really anyway. So hopefully that answered your question. Ko-fi's a pretty good setup at this point, because it's not taking a platform fee. It just takes a Stripe processing fee. So it's way better than 30% from YouTube anyway. Right? All right, cool. We're going to get out of here. So shout out to my boy Adam Green for coming on. I'm glad he came on. He's obviously very convicted in his current position. I think he seemed pretty honest to me, bro. I think he was genuinely curious, like, wait, what do you think about that? So you're saying this? Yeah, follow-ups. I think I like that we got to that vibe where it wasn't like I need to come out victorious, I'm on the spot. It's more like, let's just kind of feel each other out, understand where they're coming from. So yeah, shout out to my boy Adam Green. No More News. And dude, just in case you don't know who that is, he does awesome work exposing like Zionist propaganda and agendas. So go check him out for sure. I should do a freestyle on your next single. I don't know who you are. I wouldn't just throw people on my music just because, even if you could rap really, really good, I wouldn't do that. It would either someone that I actually know or like. It's kind of like art, right? You wouldn't let just someone come throw a paintbrush at your canvas. Even if they throw the paintbrush good, it's like, do I know you? Do you agree with the sentiments of this music? Like, did you just call me a grifter? But anyway. Thanks again. You're the man. Thank you, man. All right. I'm going to get out of here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. Tomorrow I have a show with Alpha Vedic. So, and yeah, and like technically these are normally Skull and Globers nights. I don't think I can do a Skull and Globers tonight. Let's be real, because it's already 10, and like we may have to hold off this week. But then we have Alpha Vedic tomorrow. If you want to sign up for the monthly membership, that's members.miswits.com. Apparently they do. Mine does take a bit of a freaking. If you're not going to use the actual platform that has like all the different like the calendars and private perks and stuff, then just go to Ko-fi. They don't take anything, but you can go to members.miswits.com and we're upgrading stuff there, and you're about to get private access to a private our Discord if you want to like have like private watch parties or conversations there. We can also do that within the group, but it'll just take you over to the Discord. If you have a Discord, it'll just be for Miswits. The Discord, so cool. And if you want to support the stream, kofi.com/Witsit. Like I said, we have Alpha Vedic tomorrow. We have Sam Tripoli coming up. I think the 17th. I have to fly out on the 16th. Gotta figure out the whole travel situation, figure out how to purchase the tickets to get there and where to stay and like a rental car and then back and stuff like that. But that's the 17th. Cool. And if you are a Miswit, you can find the calendar and you can kind of stay up to date on what's going to happen. And I'm going to make some like publicly available calendar at some point for everyone, and just won't have literally everything I'm doing. Like the Miswits will get inside access to certain things, but cool, man. You can also, of course, always support that Cash App, $WitsitGetsIt, and paypal.me/innerworld. And yeah, like I said, kofi.com/Witsit. Apparently, okay, I'm going to be launching a BitChute and starting to set up my Odyssey to be streaming to Odyssey at the same time as well, because we're going to be talking about a bunch more censored subjects. So BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, Rockfin. Yeah, we'll just stick with that right now. So stay on the lookout for that. The Witsit Gets It on Odyssey is me. It's just uploading random stuff from YouTube. I synced it with YouTube a long time ago, and it just uploads certain ones and certain ones it doesn't. I don't know. I think you can stream on BitChute now, so stay tuned for that. All right, we're going to wrap it up. I'm tired. I hope you enjoyed. I guess you can see that we always disagree. And I will say one again, like the whole purpose of the stream was like I don't fear information. I think if someone's weak in their faith or they're not well researched, they can hear Adam and they maybe like have their whole world shaken. And like I told him, I think that might be good, because if you're not like if information itself is like making the whole foundation of your world will crumble, like okay, like was it solid in the first place? The answer is no. You should just never try to censor information that disagrees with you. You should never try to shut it down. You should never try to make sure people don't get to hear it. Like you should. Same argument for flat Earth. If flat Earth is so wrong, you wouldn't have to. Why do you have to censor it? Just put it out in front of everyone, put it on display for everyone to see, so it can be proven wrong. In fact, you have to lie about it by censoring it to where no one can see what it really is, and then misrepresent what it says and pump that out to everyone, while you keep the real stuff, the actual position, the actual arguments hidden, completely misrepresent them on purpose to where they're just insane and improvably wrong. Well, that's what you would do if you're hiding something, right? Your truth doesn't fear investigation. They do, right? They do. Same thing with a bunch of the genetic modification, the GMOs. All right, I'm going to talk to you guys later. So, Sig and speak truth unequivocally. I think we're caught up on everything. Great stream tonight. Very enlightening discussion. Oh, yeah. I already read that. So, we're caught up. All right. Sig and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So, who cares what other people think? They're always going to attack you. Always diligently pursue the truth. And And then when you find it, speak it, right? It's pretty simple. And just check out Alpha Vedic tomorrow. What's true is rarely popular. What's popular is rarely true. Peace.
Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they sipping pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature that mean extorted it. They forging it. If news ain't good informant to informing them, there's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we port and ships important gifts. Of course it is, but extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?